Hello, and welcome to Whispers Before Sleep, a space where we gently unravel the stories hidden within the body, stories of silent battles and evolutionary quirks that shape our existence. Tonight, we descend into a realm often whispered about in discomfort, a reality that touches nearly half of humanity. We explore the silent, persistent world of the organism that makes its home upon our skin, in the warm, dark spaces between our toes, a world of relentless itching, of quiet embarrassment, and of biological intrigue, a world known simply as athlete's foot. Before we journey deeper, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to those who have chosen to rest here with me. Your presence is what gives this quiet corner its purpose. If you find comfort in these explorations, consider lending your support with a like or a subscription. Such gestures, though small, help this channel grow and allow me to continue weaving these tales for you. And now, let us leave the waking world behind. Settle in, let your breath deepen, and allow the story to unfold, not as a medical lecture, but as a slow, meandering narrative of life in all its persistent and peculiar forms. The ground we walk upon is not so different from the skin we inhabit. Both are landscapes, territories teeming with life unseen, worlds within worlds. We often think of our bodies as fortresses, impenetrable and sovereign. Yet, we are ecosystems, walking planets host to countless microscopic inhabitants. Some are benevolent allies, aiding in digestion and protection. Others are quiet squatters, causing neither harm nor benefit. And a select few are persistent opportunists, waiting for the smallest change in the climate of our skin to begin their gentle, maddening conquest. This conquest begins not with a declaration of war, but with a whisper of moisture and warmth. The human foot, encased for hours, is a perfect simulation of a tropical rainforest. It is dark, it is humid, and it is rich in nourishment. For a certain type of life, it is not a poulkas of discomfort, but a promised land, a haven. Here, in this secluded microclimate, a drama unfolds, one that has ensnared almost half of the human population in its subtle, itchy grip. We often attribute such common afflictions to a failure of hygiene, a personal shortcoming. But the truth is far more fascinating, woven into the very fabric of our evolution. The problem is not necessarily the strength of the invader, but rather a curious oversight in our own magnificent design. A small loophole in the grand architecture of our bodies left open by the relentless march of natural selection. This is not a story of weakness, but one of fascinating compromise. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support allows me to continue crafting these whispered journeys into the night. Now, let your eyes grow heavy. Let the day's concerns drift away. We are about to explore the hidden life of your skin, a story of persistence, adaptation, and the quiet, undeniable memory of our own evolution. Our story begins not with an itch, but with a wall, a magnificent, sprawling barrier that separates the inner sanctum of you from the vast, external world. This is your skin, a landscape of incredible complexity and resilience. It is our first line of defense, a living parchment upon which the story of our interaction with the environment is constantly written. We think of it as a simple covering, but it is a kingdom unto itself, with its own topography, its own climates, and its own inhabitants. Imagine this landscape from a great height. See the rolling hills and valleys of its surface, the forests of hair follicles, the glistening pools of sweat. Now, descend closer. The seemingly smooth plain reveals itself to be an intricate mosaic of cells, layer upon layer, a formidable citadel built from the dead and the dying. For the outermost wall of this fortress is constructed from keratin, a tough, fibrous protein. These are the shingles on the roof of your body, cells that have sacrificed their lives to become a durable, waterproof shield. This shield is magnificent in its purpose. It keeps the precious fluids of our body in and the chaotic world of pathogens and pollutants out. It is constantly renewed from the bottom up, a slow and steady conveyor belt of life moving towards death and eventual exfoliation. We shed millions of these tiny, protein rich scales every day, an invisible snow of biological material. To us, it is dust. To another form of life, it is a vast, endless harvest. For the organism we speak of, this wall is not a barrier. It is the very thing it seeks. It has no desire to breach the inner chambers, to invade the bloodstream or conquer organs. Its ambitions are profoundly simple. It seeks only to consume. It is a quiet, unassuming consumer of keratin, a humble inhabitant of the outer ramparts, content to dine on the endless bounty of dead cells that we so generously provide. Its entire world is the outer surface of the castle wall. The climate of this landscape is paramount. In the dry, cool, sunlit plains of the forearm or the cheek, this consumer finds little purchase. The environment is too harsh, too exposed. But in the deep, shaded, humid valleys between the toes, the conditions are perfect. Here, moisture lingers. The air is still. The temperature is consistently warm. It is in these secluded microclimates that the consumer settles and begins its gentle, relentless work. This work is slow, patient, and largely invisible at first. There is no malice in its action, only a biological imperative to feed and to reproduce. It secretes gentle enzymes, tiny keys that unlock the keratin structure, breaking it down into simpler compounds that it can absorb. It is not tearing down the wall with brute force, but rather softening it, grain by microscopic grain. It is a subtle erosion, a quiet weathering of the landscape. And so, the stage is set, a formidable fortress built of dead cells, a humble consumer seeking only a meal, and a perfect, secluded climate that allows this quiet relationship to flourish. It is a symbiosis of sorts, though one that eventually leads the host to a state of profound distraction. The body, this vast and intelligent kingdom, soon becomes aware of this gentle erosion, and its response, or lack thereof, is the most curious part of our story. One might assume that such a persistent invasion would be met with immediate and overwhelming force. We picture the immune system as a vast, vigilant army ever ready to swarm and destroy any foreign invader. For many threats, this is precisely what occurs. A cut, a splinter, a bacterial incursion. These are met with the furious heat of inflammation, the rallying of white blood cells, the familiar signs of redness, swelling, and pain. It is a magnificent, efficient defense. Yet, for our humble consumer of keratin, the alarm bells rarely ring, the trumpets do not sound, the castle gates remain shut, and the army, for the most part, stays in its barracks. This is not a failure of the immune system. It is, rather, a profound and fascinating evolutionary oversight, a blind spot in our otherwise exquisite defense network. The body's magnificent army is trained to recognize and combat immediate, lethal threats. The bacteria that can cause septicemia, the viruses that can hijack our cellular machinery. These are the enemies that have shaped our immune responses over millions of years. These are the threats that kill quickly, that impact our ability to survive and reproduce. The body marshals its defenses against these clear and present dangers. But a slow, patient consumer of dead protein residing exclusively on the outermost surface of the deadest layer of skin, this does not register as a priority. From an evolutionary perspective, it posed no significant threat to our survival. An itch on the foot, while maddening, does not prevent one from hunting, gathering, or raising offspring. It is a nuisance, not a mortality event, and so no evolutionary pressure selected for a more aggressive immune response to this particular inhabitant. The immune system, in its glorious efficiency, overlooks it. It is beneath its notice. Furthermore, the very structure of the skin works to isolate the problem, but also to protect the consumer. The dense keratinized layers of the epidermis are difficult for immune cells to penetrate. These white blood cells are designed to patrol the moist, cellular environments of the deeper tissues and the bloodstream. The dry, densely packed outer skin is a difficult landscape for them to navigate. It is a desert that they are not equipped to cross. Thus, the consumer is left in peace, operating in a kind of immunological neutral zone. It exists in a space that is technically part of the body, yet functionally outside the realm of immune surveillance. It is a loophole, a crack in the system, and it is within this crack that the consumer thrives, spreading slowly, digesting patiently, and eventually provoking a response that is not so much an attack as it is a collateral side effect of its consumption. The body eventually does notice the gradual softening and breakdown of its outer wall. The response is often delayed and indirect, a mild inflammation caused not by the organism itself, but by the debris of its feast, and the body's own attempts to repair the subtly damaged tissue. This is the source of the infamous itch, a faint, desperate signal from a frontier that the central government has largely ignored. It is a fascinating paradox. Our bodies are equipped to fight wars against titans, yet they are persistently bothered by the quietest of guests. This is the central mystery we will explore, a tale not of weakness, but of evolutionary triage. The body, in its infinite wisdom, has decided that this is a battle not worth fighting, and so the whisper of an itch remains, a gentle, persistent reminder of this biological compromise. Consider the nature of the invader itself, for it is a creature of profound simplicity. It belongs to an ancient kingdom of life, one that thrives in shadows and dampness, a kingdom that walks the fine line between plant and animal. It is a fungus, a word that often conjures images of mushrooms in a forest or mold on forgotten bread. But this is a different form, a microscopic, thread like being, a hypha. Thousands of them together form a mycelial network, a living, breathing feeding mat that is both individual and collective. This fungal form is not a complex parasite with sophisticated mechanisms for evading detection. It is, by most measures, rather weak. It cannot tolerate the harsh, dry light of the sun for long. It withers in the face of open air and cleanliness. Its reproductive strategy is passive, releasing microscopic spores into the environment, leaving their survival to chance and circumstance. They are fragile voyagers, these spores, yet so numerous that a few are always destined to find a new haven. Compare this to the true titans of disease that have haunted humanity. The bacterium that causes tuberculosis, a master of evasion that can hide within the very cells sent to destroy it. The virus that causes smallpox, a monstrously efficient puppet master that rewrites our cellular machinery to do its bidding. These are formidable foes, enemies that shaped history and carved deep scars into our collective DNA. Our immune system is honed by these ancient battles. Against such sophisticated adversaries, our humble skin dwelling fungus seems almost laughably primitive. It possesses no stealth technology, no weaponry to speak of. Its only strategy is consumption. It is a simple, hungry entity in a world of plenty. And yet, it persists where greater foes have been eradicated. It thrives not through strength, but through obscurity. It is the quiet tenant who, through sheer lack of threat, is never asked to leave. This persistence is a testament to its niche. It found a place on our bodies that we, through our own habits and evolution, keep prepared for it. Our preference for footwear, our accumulation of sweat, the very architecture of our toes that create secluded grottos, all of these factors maintain the perfect environment. We are the stewards of our own inconvenience, curating the conditions for this gentle invasion. The fungus does not seek to harm, it seeks only to exist. The damage it causes is incidental, a byproduct of its feast. The itching, the redness, the peeling, these are not the goals of some malicious entity. They are the unintended consequences of a biological process. The skin, our magnificent barrier, is simply being slowly digested in a place where our defenses are blind and our attention is often elsewhere. There is a strange humility in this realization. Our bodies, these magnificent achievements of evolution, are host to a creature that is, in the grand scheme of pathogens, remarkably unimpressive. It is not a demon from the depths, but a ghost in the outer walls. It is a whisper of an itch, a faint signal from a frontier we rarely consider, reminding us that we are not entirely our own. We are a habitat, a landscape, and every landscape has its inhabitants, both seen and unseen. The journey of this fungus to its chosen home is a tale of quiet transmission, a story written not in dramatic encounters, but in mundane, everyday moments. It does not leap through the air with great ambition. Instead, it hitchhikes. It passes from one person to another on flakes of skin, so small as to be invisible, each flake a potential vessel carrying microscopic spores to a new world. Imagine a single spore, a tiny, dormant capsule of life, released from its parent network somewhere on the damp floor of a communal shower. It is carried on a current of steam, drifting aimlessly until it settles onto the warm, moist surface of a discarded towel. There it waits. It has no sense of time, no urgency. It simply waits for the right conditions to awaken. The journey continues as the towel is picked up, the friction of the fabric dislodging the spore once more. It floats in the air, a speck of dust with a biological secret, until it lands on the fertile landscape of a new host's foot. The environment is perfect. The warmth, the humidity, the rich harvest of keratin cells. The spore germinates, sending out its first delicate hypha, a rootlet, into this new world. The colonization has begun. This is how the story unfolds, time and time again. It is not a story of carelessness, but one of simple probability, the sharing of bathing spaces, the trying on of shoes in a store, walking barefoot on a carpet in a hotel room. These are all chapters in the silent migration of this organism. It is a testament to our shared humanity, our shared environments, and the invisible connections that pass between us. The statistics are a quiet echo of this constant, low level transmission. Nearly half of all the people will experience this condition at some point. It is a staggering number, a silent majority touched by this gentle nuisance. It is a universal experience, crossing borders and cultures, a common thread in the human experience, yet one rarely spoken of in polite conversation. It is our quiet, shared secret. The efficiency of its spread is not due to its virulence, but to our own social nature and the perfect environments we create. We build warm, damp spaces for communal cleansing. We share footwear. We walk on shared surfaces. We are, unwittingly, excellent farmers of this particular crop. We provide the fields, and the spores simply fall where they may. There is no blame in this transmission, only the simple mechanics of biology and environment. It is a natural process, as natural as the wind carrying the seeds of a dandelion. Some seeds find fertile soil, others do not. For the fungus, the human foot is the richest soil imaginable, and so it takes root and begins its slow, patient consumption, weaving its story into the outermost layers of our own. The initial stages of this colonization are a master class in subtlety. There is no fanfare, no sudden pain, no obvious sign of a new inhabitant. The first hyphae are microscopic explorers, mapping the terrain of the skin, secreting their gentle enzymes to soften the landscape. For days, perhaps even weeks, their presence is a secret known only to them. The first hint of their activity is often not an itch, but a faint, almost imperceptible dryness, a slight tightness of the skin, perhaps, in the narrow spaces between the smallest toes. It is a sensation so minor it is easily dismissed, attributed to a change in the weather a new soap, or simply not noticed at all. The body has not yet taken notice. The immune system slumbers on, unaware of the gentle erosion at the outermost gates. Slowly, almost lazily, the fungal network expands. It is in no hurry. Time is on its side. It moves from the webbing of the toes to the soles of the feet, to the heels, to the nails. It follows the paths of greatest moisture and least disturbance. It is a pioneer, settling a new world with patient deliberation. It does not seek to conquer the entire body, for it has no use for the living, hydrated cells within. Its kingdom is built entirely upon the dead. As it feeds, it alters the environment. The digestion of keratin creates minute changes in the pH of the skin. The byproducts of its metabolism accumulate. The physical structure of the outermost layer of skin is compromised, becoming softer, more macerated. It is this gradual change that finally, reluctantly, draws the attention of the body's defense networks. The response is not the furious assault reserved for a bacterial infection. It is more akin to a distant, bureaucratic acknowledgement of a minor border incident. A few immune cells are dispatched to the area. They detect the foreign biological material, the subtle signs of tissue distress. They release mild inflammatory signals. This is the beginning of the itch. But even this response is muted, hampered by the location. The dense, keratinized nature of the skin makes it difficult for a full-scale immune response to mobilize. It is like trying to station an army in a desert with no supply lines. The forces that arrive are limited, and their effectiveness is curtailed. They cause enough irritation to generate the sensation of itching, but not enough to clear the entrenched inhabitant. And so, a stalemate is reached. The fungus continues its patient feeding. The immune system maintains its mild, ineffective irritation. The host becomes aware of a faint, nagging sensation, a whisper from the feet that something is not quite as it should be. The quiet colonization has finally made its presence known, not with a shout, but with the softest, most persistent of whispers. The great itch has begun. The sensation of an itch is a curious and ancient language of the body, a signal of something amiss at the periphery. It is a whisper from the skin, a request for attention, a gentle urging to investigate a small patch of the world we inhabit. When we respond to that urge, when we scratch, we engage in one of the most primal and satisfying of human rituals. It is a targeted, focused act of relief, a momentary restoration of order. But in the case of our fungal inhabitant, this ritual takes on a different character. The itch it provokes is not a sharp, localized pinprick, but a broad, diffuse, and maddening sensation. It is a whisper that grows into a persistent murmur, a background hum of irritation that is always present, tugging at the edge of consciousness. It is an itch that seems to reside not just on the skin, but somehow beneath it, just out of reach. This particular quality stems from the nature of the invasion. The fungus does not puncture or invade deeply. It works on the surface, but its enzymatic activity subtly alters the structure of the skin itself. It softens the connections between the dead cells, creating microscopic fissures and weaknesses. The body senses this slight breakdown of its integrity, this gentle crumbling of the outer wall, and it responds with a low grade, widespread inflammatory signal. The nerves in the area are bathed in these inflammatory chemicals, and they dutifully send their message to the brain. Something is happening here. Please attend to it. The brain, in turn, generates the conscious experience of an itch, but because the cause is not a single point of injury, but a widespread subtle erosion, the itch itself feels pervasive and deep. It is the body sensing a landscape changing, not a single wound. Scratching provides a temporary, glorious relief because it does two things. First, it creates a counterstimulus, a stronger, more immediate sensation of pain or pressure that temporarily overwhelms the itch signal. Second, and more crucially, it physically disrupts the fungal network. It breaks apart the delicate hyphae, scraping them from their foothold, providing a momentary cessation of their enzymatic feast. Yet, this relief is a Faustian bargain. The act of scratching, while providing a few seconds of blissful cessation, also creates microabrasions in the already compromised skin. These tiny tears open new pathways for the fungus to spread, and they introduce new organic material, broken skin cells, upon which it can feed. The scratching that soothes also sows the seeds for a stronger, more widespread itch to come. Thus, a vicious cycle is born. The itch prompts a scratch. The scratch damages the skin and spreads the fungus. The expanded fungal presence leads to a greater inflammatory response and a more intense itch. The cycle repeats, each turn deepening the frustration and the physical evidence of the condition. It is a feedback loop of irritation, a conversation between host and inhabitant that quickly escalates into an argument. This is the unique madness it inspires. It is not a debilitating pain, but a relentless, distracting irritation. It is a whisper that grows so persistent it can drown out other thoughts. It is a sensation that pulls the mind downward to the feet, away from the world, into a private, frustrating dialogue with one's own skin. Over time, this quiet dialogue manifests visibly upon the skin, writing its history in a language of redness, scaling, and fissures. The landscape of the foot begins to change, telling the story of the persistent inhabitant and the body's frustrated response. The changes are not uniform. They are as varied as the individuals who host them, but they follow certain patterns, certain themes. In the sheltered spaces between the toes, the skin may become macerated, pale, and soggy, much like a landscape that has been underwater for too long. The constant moisture softens the skin to a distressing degree, and it may peel away in soft, white layers, revealing pink, tender skin beneath that stings at the touch of air. This is the epicenter of the dampness, the heart of the fungal territory. On the soles and the heels, the story is often one of excessive dryness and scaling. The body, perhaps in a misguided attempt to fortify the breached barrier, may accelerate the production of skin cells. But these new cells are produced in an environment that is already compromised. The result is a buildup of thick, dry scales that crack and fissure under pressure. These fissures can be painful, small cracks that speak of a landscape under drought stress. Sometimes, the body's inflammatory response becomes more pronounced, leading to patches of red, itchy skin that can blister. These small vesicles, filled with clear fluid, are a more urgent attempt by the immune system to isolate and flush out the invader. They represent a escalation in the conflict, a move from a whisper of irritation to a visible, palpable protest. The nails, too, can become archives of this long-term occupation. The fungus, seeking new sources of keratin, may migrate under the nail plate. There, it thrives in the darkness and protection, slowly digesting the hard nail material. The nail may respond by thickening, becoming yellow or brown, and separating from the nail bed beneath. It is a slow, inexorable transformation, a testament to an invasion measured not in days, but in months and years. Each of these manifestations is a chapter in the same story. They are the body's visible language of distress, its attempt to communicate a problem that its internal defenses are poorly equipped to handle. The skin is a map, and these symptoms are the topographical features drawn by the ongoing, gentle war between host and inhabitant. They are also a source of profound self-consciousness. Unlike an internal ailment, this condition is on display, or at least, the fear of it being on display is ever present. It influences the choice of footwear at the beach, the quickness to remove shoes in someone else's home, the reluctance to engage in activities that might reveal the affected skin. It carries a silent, social weight, a minor but persistent shadow of embarrassment. The landscape of the foot becomes a private, secret place, a source of discomfort, both physical and psychological. It is a reminder of the body's permeability, its vulnerability to the smallest and simplest of life forms, and its curious evolutionary blind spots. The mind, when first faced with a persistent, irritating sensation, begins to weave narratives around it. The simple biological reality of a fungal infection becomes intertwined with notions of personal failing, of uncleanliness, of a lack of care. This is perhaps one of the heaviest burdens of the condition, the silent stigma that clings to it, a cultural inheritance that is as persistent as the itch itself. We are taught from a young age the virtues of cleanliness. We wash our hands, we shower, we present a clean and tidy appearance to the world. These are social contracts, ways of showing respect for ourselves and for others. And so, when a condition arises that is culturally linked to damp, unclean places, communal showers, locker rooms, shared footwear, it becomes unfairly tied to a concept of personal neglect. This is a profound misunderstanding of the biological reality. This organism is an opportunist, not a moralist. It does not discriminate based on hygiene. A meticulously clean individual who frequents a gym is at a higher risk than a less fastidious person who never wears closed-toe shoes. It is about environment and exposure, not virtue. The fungus requires only a brief encounter and the right conditions to establish itself. It is a matter of probability, not character. Yet, the feeling of shame persists. It leads to secrecy and a reluctance to seek help or even to speak about the discomfort. People may suffer for years trying over-the-counter remedies half-heartedly, embarrassed to mention it to a doctor or a partner. They may assume it is a personal flaw to be hidden, rather than a common biological occurrence to be addressed. This self-consciousness can amplify the physical discomfort, adding a layer of mental anguish to the physical itch. The mind becomes preoccupied with hiding the condition, with avoiding situations that might lead to its discovery. It can feel like wearing a secret that is written on the soles of your feet, a secret you fear is somehow visible to everyone. Dispelling this stigma requires a shift in perspective, a move from a cultural narrative to a biological one. It requires understanding that the human body is an ecosystem, and ecosystems are constantly interacting with other ecosystems. Sometimes other species move in. This is not a failure. It is an event. It is a happening, like weather. It is not a reflection of the self, but a temporary state of the skin. Seeing it through this lens, as a neutral biological phenomenon, can remove its emotional power. It becomes a problem to be solved, like a leaky faucet or a squeaky door, rather than a mark of shame. The goal is not to eradicate all life from our skin, an impossible task, but to restore balance to the ecosystem, to make the environment less hospitable for this one particular inhabitant. The journey towards relief, therefore, begins not with a cream or a powder, but with a thought, a gentle, forgiving thought that separates the self from the symptom, that recognizes this as a widespread, common, and utterly impersonal condition. It is the first and most important step in quieting the itch, both on the skin and in the mind. The history of our relationship with this condition is as old as our desire to gather in communities, to bathe together, to share spaces. It is a shadow companion of civilization itself. The ancient Greeks wrote of it. Athletes in their gymnasiums suffering from an itch of the foot. The Romans, in their vast public baths, knew it well. It has been a constant, subtle thread in the tapestry of human social life. For centuries, it was misunderstood, grouped with other skin ailments under vague, descriptive terms. It was seen as a form of eczema, a scurvy of the skin, or simply a morbid source, humoral imbalance. Treatments were based on these flawed understandings. Poultices of strange herbs, washes of vinegar or wine, prayers, and incantations. The true, fungal nature of the affliction remained a mystery, hidden in plain sight. It was not until the advent of the microscope that the pieces began to fall into place. In the late 19th century, scientists peered into the hidden world and saw them, the delicate, branching hyphae, the threads of the fungal network, woven through the scrapings of affected skin. Here was the culprit, finally revealed. Not an imbalance of bodily fluids, not a moral failing, but a living organism. This discovery coincided with a rise in communal living and athleticism in the modern era. The proliferation of public swimming baths, gymnasiums, and organized sports created perfect environments for the fungus to thrive and spread among populations. It was no longer just a personal nuisance, it became a widespread, commonplace experience. The term athlete's foot itself emerged from this era, forever linking the condition to the shared spaces of sport and recreation. The 20th century brought the first targeted treatments. The discovery of compounds that could selectively inhibit fungal growth without overly harming human cells was a breakthrough. Whitfield's ointment, a blend of benzoic and salicylic acid, became a staple for decades. A sharp-smelling salve that burned slightly upon application but promised relief. It was a crude but effective weapon in the new microscopic war. Later, more sophisticated antifungal agents were developed. The azoles, the allylamines, These names belong to a modern arsenal of creams, sprays, and powders. They work by targeting the cellular machinery of the fungus, disrupting the synthesis of ergosterol, a key component of its cell membrane. Without a functional membrane, the fungus simply falls apart. Yet, for all our scientific progress, the condition persists. The treatments are effective, but they require a level of consistency that is often at odds with human nature. We apply the cream until the itch subsides, and then we stop, believing the battle is won. But the fungal network, though battered, is often not eradicated. It retreats into microscopic strongholds, waiting for the therapy to cease before beginning its patient recolonization. This is why the recurrence rate is so astonishingly high. We win the battle, but lose the war again and again because we underestimate the patience and resilience of our simple opponent. Our history with this condition, therefore, is not one of victory, but of a long, drawn out stalemate, a quiet negotiation between human habit and fungal persistence. To truly understand this persistent negotiation, we must descend to the microscopic level, to the very interface where human skin meets fungal hypha. This is a landscape of astonishing complexity, a silent war fought with chemicals and enzymes, a battle for the very building blocks of life. Imagine the very edge of a single fungal thread, a hypha. It is not an inert structure. It is a dynamic living pipeline. At its tip, it secretes a cocktail of enzymes, specialized proteins that act as molecular keys. These keys are designed to unlock the tight, cross-linked structure of keratin, the protein that forms the tough, protective outer layer of our skin. Keratin is a formidable fortress. Its fibers are strong and insoluble, designed to protect the delicate, living cells beneath from the harshness of the outside world. But to the fungal enzymes, it is not a fortress, it is a feast. The enzymes work like tiny molecular scissors, snipping the long keratin chains into smaller fragments, peptides, and eventually individual amino acids. These broken down components are then absorbed by the hypha, transported back along its length to fuel its growth and reproduction. The fungus is quite literally consuming the structure of our skin, not out of malice, but out of simple, profound hunger. It is a consumer of ruins, dining on the dead and discarded cells we shed every day. The human body is not a passive participant in this consumption. The slow erosion of its outer barrier does not go entirely unnoticed. Cells in the epidermis detect the presence of the fungal enzymes and the debris they create. They release signals, cytokines, that are a call to arms, a gentle, persistent alarm. This alarm draws immune cells to the area. They attempt to phagocytose, to engulf and digest the invading fungal elements. They release their own inflammatory mediators. This is the source of the redness, the slight swelling, the heat, and most potently, the itch. The itch is a byproduct of this biochemical conversation, a side effect of the body's attempt to engage an enemy it is poorly equipped to eliminate. The battle is fought on a terrain that favors the defender. The dense, dry, and constantly shedding nature of the outer skin layer makes it difficult for the body's immune cells to operate effectively. They are like knights in heavy armor trying to fight in a deep, soft sand. Their movements are slowed, their effectiveness reduced. Meanwhile, the fungus continues its patient work. It does not need to win a decisive victory. It only needs to keep feeding, to keep spreading, slowly and steadily. It is a war of attrition, and the fungus, with its simple needs and relentless patience, is perfectly designed for it. The human body, for all its complexity, is left responding to a whisper of an invasion with a response that is just enough to cause discomfort, but rarely enough to achieve a lasting cure. The environment is the silent architect of this entire interaction. Without the right conditions, the fungal spores remain dormant, harmless hitchhikers on the skin. But we, through our habits and our physiology, so often provide the perfect environment. We are the curators of the very climate that allows this quiet invasion to flourish. Consider the modern shoe. It is a marvel of protection and support, but it is also a miniature biome. Encased in leather or synthetic materials, the foot is separated from the cooling, drying effects of the air. With every step, the foot flexes and warms. Sweat glands activate, releasing moisture that cannot readily evaporate. The temperature inside a shoe can rise significantly, creating a warm, humid, and dark environment. This is a perfect simulation of a tropical forest floor, the natural habitat for many soil-dwelling fungi. The shoe, in essence, becomes a portable terrarium strapped to the foot, cultivating its own unique ecosystem. For hours each day, we willingly subject our feet to these ideal growing conditions. Socks, though designed to wick moisture, often become saturated, holding the dampness against the skin. Different materials create different microclimates. Cotton, which absorbs moisture but holds it, can keep the skin damp for longer periods. Synthetic blends may wick better, but can also trap heat. The choice of hosiery becomes a subtle factor in the ecological balance of the foot. Beyond footwear, our daily rituals contribute. A vigorous workout, a long day at work, a stressful situation, all can prompt increased sweating. A shower afterwards may clean the skin, but if the feet are not thoroughly dried, especially in the critical spaces between the toes, the residual moisture is simply sealed back into the shoe, restarting the cycle. Even the time of year influences this microscopic drama. Summer, with its heat and humidity, provides a more conducive external environment, often leading to a worsening of symptoms. Winter, with its dry, cold air, might offer a respite, but the constant switching between cold outdoors and warm, heated indoors can still create conditions of perspiration and moisture trapping. We are therefore not merely passive victims of a random biological event. We are active, if unwitting, participants in creating and maintaining the environment that allows it to persist. The battle is not just against the fungus itself. It is against the climate we so frequently create around our own feet. Understanding this is the first step toward true management. It shifts the perspective from merely attacking the invader to thoughtfully altering the environment to make it less hospitable. It is a strategy of ecological manipulation, of changing the weather in the tiny world we carry with us on our every step. The evolutionary history of this relationship is a long and quiet dance, a story of two species adapting to each other over millennia. The fungus is an ancient form of life, one that predates humanity by hundreds of millions of years. It evolved to break down organic matter in the soil, to recycle the fallen leaves and the decaying wood, to be a master of decomposition in a world of constant death and renewal. Humanity, by contrast, is a relative newcomer, and as we evolved, as we lost our protective fur and began to walk upright on the savanna, our feet changed. They became tougher, developing thick pads of keratinized skin to protect against the rough ground. In doing so, we created a new, unexploited niche. We became, quite by accident, a walking source of the very material this soil dwelling organism had evolved to consume. Our migration out of Africa and across the globe did not leave this relationship behind. It brought it with us. The fungus, in its microscopic spore form, traveled with us, a stowaway on the human journey. It found new opportunities in the environments we created, the first settled villages, the first communal bathing areas, the first shoes made of animal hides that trapped moisture and warmth. This was not a hostile takeover. It was a slow, gradual colonization of a new territory. There was no evolutionary pressure on the fungus to become more virulent. It was already perfectly suited to its new environment, and there was little pressure on us to develop a robust defense. The itch was and remains a nuisance, not a threat to survival or reproduction. It did not kill us. It merely annoyed us. This is the heart of the evolutionary oversight. Our magnificent immune system, shaped by plagues and parasites that could decimate populations, learned to ignore this trivial frontier issue. It was a calculated trade-off, devoting significant resources to constantly patrol and defend the dead outer layer of the skin against a minor irritant would be metabolically wasteful. It is more efficient to tolerate the occasional itch than to maintain a permanent, high alert garrison on every square inch of skin. Thus, a stalemate was encoded in our very biology. The fungus found a perpetual feast on our bodies, and we evolved a conscious awareness of its presence, the itch, but not a definitive biological mechanism to eliminate it. We are stuck with this quiet tenet because evolution, in its ruthless efficiency, deemed it not worth the energy to evict. This perspective transforms the condition from a personal failing into a fascinating anthropological artifact. It is a living relic of our own evolutionary journey, a reminder of our connection to the soil and to the decomposers that maintain the world. The whisper of an itch is an echo of our own history, a subtle price paid for our unique human form and our social shoe-wearing ways. The psychological weight of a persistent, minor irritation should not be underestimated. While it may not be a grave medical threat, its constant presence can wear on the mind, eroding concentration and breeding a low-grade frustration that tints the edges of daily life. It is a background hum of discomfort, a thread of distraction woven through the fabric of one's thoughts. The mind, seeking relief, can become fixated on the sensation. It creates a feedback loop where the mere awareness of the itch amplifies its perceived intensity. The brain, once alerted, begins to scan for the sensation, to seek it out, to confirm its continued presence. This hypervigilance makes the faintest whisper feel like a shout. In quiet moments, when trying to read a book, to focus on work, or to drift into sleep, the itch can become a central focus, a stubborn obstacle to peace. It is not a pain that demands immediate, dramatic attention, but a nagging, trivial torment that refuses to be ignored. It is the psychological equivalent of a dripping faucet in the night. This can lead to a sense of helplessness and irritation that extends beyond the physical sensation. One can become annoyed with one's own body for its vulnerability, for its inability to resolve such a seemingly simple issue. The act of scratching, while providing a moment of relief, is often followed by a wave of guilt and frustration for having given in to the urge, for potentially making the situation worse. The private nature of the condition adds another layer of psychological complexity. It can feel like a secret inadequacy, a minor shame that must be hidden from view. This can influence social behavior, creating a slight but constant undercurrent of anxiety in situations where shoes must be removed or where the state of one's feet might be noticed. Over time, this can cultivate a disconnection from the body. The feet, sources of mobility and support, become objects of discomfort, things to be managed and endured rather than appreciated. The simple grounding act of walking can become subconsciously associated with a low level of aggravation. Yet, within this psychological challenge lies an opportunity for a different kind of response. The practice of mindfulness, of observing the itch with a neutral, non judgmental awareness, can break the feedback loop. Instead of reacting with frustration, one can simply note the sensation. There is an itch. This mental shift does not eliminate the physical reality, but it can remove its emotional power, its ability to disturb the peace of the mind. The itch becomes just another sensation, like the sound of distant traffic or the feeling of clothing on skin. It is acknowledged, but it is not given authority over one's emotional state. This is not a cure, but a strategy for coexistence, a way to quiet the mind, even if the skin continues to whisper. The quest for relief has spawned a vast array of treatments, from the scientifically formulated to the folkloric, each a testament to humanity's enduring desire to soothe this persistent irritation. The modern pharmacy aisle offers a bewildering choice of creams, sprays, powders, and gels, each promising to be the definitive solution. The most common are the topical antifungals, chemical agents designed to disrupt the life cycle of the fungus. They target the cellular membrane, the reproductive cycle, or the metabolic processes unique to fungal cells. Application is a daily ritual, a direct intervention in the microscopic war being waged on the skin's surface. The feel of the cool cream, the smell of the medicated powder, these become part of the daily routine of management. For more stubborn, entrenched cases, oral medications exist. These are systemic solutions traveling through the bloodstream to reach the fungus from within. They represent a more significant intervention, a mobilization of the body's internal resources to deliver a decisive blow to the occupant. They are effective, but they also carry a greater potential for side effects. A reminder that internal warfare is a serious undertaking. Alongside these modern solutions exists a long tradition of home remedies passed down through generations. Soaks in warm water mixed with vinegar renowned for its acidic properties that alter the skin's pH, soaks in tea tree oil, an essential oil with natural antifungal qualities. The application of garlic or coconut oil or countless other natural substances believed to possess healing powers. These remedies speak to a time before modern medicine, when people turned to the pantry and the garden for solutions. Their effectiveness varies, but their persistence reveals a deep-seated human need to take action, to feel agency over the discomfort. The act of preparing a soak, of applying a natural unguent, is itself a form of therapy, a proactive engagement with the problem. The choice of treatment is often a personal journey of trial and error. What works for one person may not work for another. The fungus itself can develop resistance to certain agents, forcing a change in strategy. The journey towards relief is rarely linear. It is often marked by periods of improvement, followed by frustrating recurrences. This process can be discouraging, but it is also a lesson in persistence. It mirrors the persistence of the fungus itself. It requires consistency, a commitment to continuing treatment even after the symptoms have subsided, to ensure the network is truly eradicated and not merely retreated. The goal is not just to stop the itch, but to create an environment so inhospitable that the whisper cannot return. The true challenge in managing this condition lies not in the initial application of treatment, but in the long, patient follow through. The life cycle of the fungus is a lesson in patience and resilience. While antifungal agents can quickly kill the active, feeding hyphae on the surface, the dormant spores can often survive, encased in a protective shell, waiting for the hostile environment to pass. These spores are the hidden architects of recurrence. They are time capsules of irritation scattered throughout the affected area, embedded in the deeper layers of the skin's outer stratum corneum, or even nestled under the nails. They are designed to withstand adversity, to remain viable through periods of drought, famine, and chemical assault. A typical course of topical treatment might last for a week or two after the symptoms disappear. This feels like a long time, an eternity when the maddening itch has already been silenced. The urge to stop, to declare victory, and return to normal life is powerful. But this is precisely when the most critical phase of the treatment is underway. The continued application of cream or powder during this symptom-free period is a mopping up operation. It is a systematic effort to eliminate those dormant spores as they germinate before they can establish new networks and trigger the whole cycle again. Stopping treatment at the first sign of relief is like ceasing antibiotics because the fever broke. It allows the most resilient elements to survive and multiply. This requirement for extended treatment clashes with human psychology. We are wired to respond to immediate stimuli. The itch is the problem. No itch means no problem. The abstract concept of invisible dormant spores does not hold the same motivational power as the urgent need to scratch. We are fighting an enemy we cannot see for a future problem we do not currently feel. This is why the recurrence rate is so notoriously high. It is not that the treatments are ineffective. It is that the treatment schedule is often cut short by the patient, not the physician. We defeat the army, but we leave the landmines buried in the field, ready to explode when we least expect it. Achieving a lasting peace requires a shift in mindset. It demands that we engage not in a battle, but in a protracted campaign. It requires treating the entire recommended course not as a suggestion, but as a non negotiable requirement. The goal is not the cessation of itching, but the complete eradication of the fungal presence, active and dormant, from the landscape of the skin. This is the silent, unglamorous work of true management. It is the daily application of cream to skin that already feels fine. It is an act of faith in science and a discipline of the mind over the impulses of the body. It is the only way to break the cycle and silence the whisper for good. Beyond the direct application of antifungal agents lies a broader strategy, one of environmental manipulation. Since the fungus requires a very specific climate to thrive, the logical path to long-term management is to permanently alter that climate to make the terrain of the foot an inhospitable desert for its would-be colonizer. This begins with the principle of moisture control. Water is the lifeblood of the fungus. Without it, the spores remain dormant and the hyphae desiccate and die. Therefore, the most powerful weapon is not a chemical, but a towel. The simple, meticulous act of drying the feet completely after bathing, paying particular attention to the spaces between the toes, is a foundational act of defense. The choice of footwear becomes a critical, strategic decision. Shoes made of breathable materials, such as leather or modern meshes, allow for the evaporation of sweat and the circulation of air. Rotating shoes, allowing a pair to dry completely for 24 hours before wearing them again, prevents the accumulation of moisture and the creation of a permanent fungal reservoir. Socks, too, play a vital role. Moisture wicking synthetic blends or natural fibers like wool are designed to pull perspiration away from the skin and toward the outer surface of the fabric where it can evaporate. Changing socks during the day, especially after exercise or if the feet feel damp, is a simple yet effective tactic. The environment beyond the shoe must also be considered. Going barefoot at home, allowing the feet to breathe and air out, denies the fungus the enclosed environment it craves. Wearing protective sandals in public showers, locker rooms, and around swimming pools creates a barrier against new spores seeking a home. Even the management of stress can be a factor, as anxiety can trigger increased sweating, altering the local climate of the feet. A calm mind can, indirectly, contribute to a less hospitable environment. This approach is less about attacking and more about cultivating a state of being that is inherently resistant. It is a philosophy of prevention rather than cure. It involves a mindful awareness of the foot's environment throughout the day, a gentle stewardship of one's own personal ecosystem. These habits, woven into the fabric of daily life, create a lasting defense. They are the quiet, consistent practices that build resilience. They may not be as immediately gratifying as applying a cream that stops an itch, but their power is cumulative and profound. They represent a shift from being a passive host to an active guardian of the body's frontiers. For some, the fungal presence becomes more than a superficial irritation. It becomes a deeply entrenched resident, particularly under the nails. This condition, known as onychomycosis, represents a fortified stronghold, a castle keep that is notoriously difficult to besiege. The nail plate is a formidable barrier made of densely packed, hardened keratin. It is designed to protect the delicate nail bed beneath. But to a fungus, it is not a barrier. It is a vast, untapped reservoir of food. The fungus, usually a dermatophyte similar to that affecting the skin, finds a microscopic point of entry, often at the tip of the nail or the sides. Once underneath or within the nail plate, it begins its slow, patient consumption. It secretes its keratin dissolving enzymes, breaking down the hard nail material from within. The body's immune system is almost entirely powerless here. The nail plate is avascular and acellular, a dead structure that cannot mount a defense. The progression is slow, measured in months and years, not days. The nail may first show a white or yellow spot under the tip. This spot slowly expands, and the nail may begin to thicken, becoming distorted and brittle. It can change color, taking on a yellow, brown, or even greenish tint. Eventually, it may separate from the nail bed, a condition known as onycholysis, which can be uncomfortable and create a space for further debris and potential bacterial infection. Treating this entrenched presence is a significant challenge. Topical antifungal lacquers exist, but their effectiveness is limited by their inability to penetrate the full thickness of the nail plate to reach the deep-seated fungus. They are like trying to water a garden through a thick layer of ice. Oral antifungal medications are the most common recourse for a severe case. These drugs are incorporated into the new nail as it grows, creating a hostile environment for the fungus from the inside out. This is a slow process, as one must wait for the healthy new nail to gradually replace the infected portion. It can take many months, even a year, to see a full resolution. This long timeline requires immense patience and commitment. It is a silent, internal process with little visible daily change. The psychological challenge is one of faith, faith in the treatment and patience with the slow, invisible progress of a new nail, growing at its own inexorable pace of a millimeter per month. The thickened, discolored nail thus becomes a timeline of the past, a record of an old infection, while the faint line of new growth at the cuticle represents the hopeful future, a slow motion victory growing quietly into place. The social matter dimension of this condition weaves a subtle but persistent thread through the fabric of daily life. It operates as a quiet undercurrent of awareness, influencing choices and interactions in ways both small and significant. Unlike a private ache or an internal malady, this is an affliction that carries the potential for revelation, and thus for a particular kind of social anxiety. The simple act of entering a home becomes a moment of calculation. The cultural expectation of removing one's shoes at the door, a sign of respect and cleanliness in many societies, transforms into a potential moment of exposure. The mind races. Are the socks presentable? Is there any visible sign? The hesitation before bending to untie the laces is a fleeting but familiar pang of self-consciousness for many. Plans for summer activities, a day at the beach, a pool party, a communal shower after a hike, are subconsciously vetted through this lens of vulnerability. The choice of footwear, the decision to participate fully or to hang back, the quick glance at the feet of others to gauge normality. These are the minor calculations performed by a mind aware of its own secret. There is a peculiar loneliness to it, born of the assumption that one is alone in this experience. The cultural stigma, the association with uncleanliness, fosters silence. It is not a topic for casual conversation, and so many suffer in quiet isolation, unaware that the person next to them in line or sitting at the next desk may be conducting the same private calculations, nursing the same minor nagging secret. This shared yet unspoken experience is perhaps one of its most curious aspects. It is a silent fellowship of irritation, a vast, invisible community bound together by a common, trivial, yet persistent discomfort. The statistics tell the story. Nearly half of all people, but the culture encourages a conspiracy of silence around it. Breaking this silence, even in one's own mind, can be a powerful form of relief. To recognize that this is not a personal failing, but a common biological event, is to drain it of its shame. To understand that it is about environment and exposure, not virtue, is to remove its social sting. The condition, in its quiet way, teaches a lesson in empathy. It reminds us that everyone carries some minor burden, some small secret imperfection or vulnerability that influences their behavior in subtle ways. The man who refuses to go bowling, the woman who always wears closed toe shoes to the beach. Their choices may have roots in something as simple and universal as a whisper of an itch on the skin. It is a humbling reminder of our shared animal nature, of the fact that we are all living organisms, hosting other organisms, navigating the world in these fragile, imperfect, and often leaky containers we call our bodies. The experience of this condition is not monolithic. It varies across the human lifespan, reflecting changes in our physiology, our environments, and our habits. From childhood to old age, the relationship with this persistent inhabitant evolves, telling a secondary story of the body's own transformation. In childhood, the skin is often more resilient, the immune system vibrantly alert to new challenges. While children are certainly not immune, the condition may be more acute and responsive. A temporary visitor, often acquired from communal pools or shared bathroom floors, and then vigorously evicted by a combination of treatment and a robust biological defense. The adolescent and young adult years often see the highest prevalence. This is the era of communal living. Boarding schools, university dormitories, shared apartments, and intense athletic activity. The locker room, the shared shower, the borrowed shoes, the prolonged wear of athletic footwear. These factors create a perfect storm of exposure and ideal environmental conditions. It is in this chapter of life that the fungus often establishes its long-term residency. During adulthood, the pattern may become one of management and recurrence. The pressures of work, which may involve long hours in formal footwear, combined with the stresses of life that can affect immune function, create a fertile ground for persistence. Treatment may be intermittent, applied when the itch becomes distracting, then abandoned when it recedes, leading to the familiar cycle. In later years, the equation shifts again. Circulation to the extremities can become less efficient, and the skin naturally becomes drier and more fragile. The immune system's vigilance may wane. As a result, the condition may present less as an itchy inflammatory response and more as a gradual, dry scaling and thickening of the skin, particularly on the soles and heels. The nails, too, are more susceptible to becoming thickened and dystrophic. a process that can be difficult to distinguish from the general effects of aging on nail growth. Treatment in older age requires greater care. The skin is more easily irritated by topical agents, and oral medications must be carefully considered due to their potential impact on the liver and interactions with other medications. The focus may shift more towards comfort and prevention than towards aggressive eradication. Thus, the story of this condition mirrors our own. It is a youthful nuisance, a persistent companion through middle age, and a quiet, managed aspect of the body's later years. It is a biological timestamp, a subtle indicator of the body's changing capacities and the environments we pass through on our journey from childhood to old age. The human response to persistent physical irritation is not merely biological or psychological, it is also deeply creative. Faced with a problem that lacks a simple, immediate solution, the mind seeks patterns, connections, and causes. This often leads to the formation of folklore and personal mythology around the condition, a narrative spun from half truths, anecdotal evidence, and a desire for understanding. A vast body of unofficial knowledge exists, passed between friends and family, discussed in online forums, and tried in the privacy of one's own bathroom. Certain foods are blamed. Too much sugar, it is said, feeds the fungus within. A lack of a specific vitamin is cited as the root cause. The body is viewed as being out of balance, too acidic, or too toxic. These theories, while often lacking scientific rigor, provide a framework for understanding and a sense of agency. They offer a path to action. Change your diet, take this supplement, avoid that food. The actions themselves may have placebo effects or general health benefits, but they rarely address the specific fungal presence on the skin. Other myths revolve around transmission. The belief that it can be caught from pets, for instance, is common, though the species that affect animals are typically different from those that prefer human keratin. The idea that it is purely a sign of poor hygiene persists despite its prevalence among the fastidious. These narratives are compelling because they simplify a complex biological interaction into a story of cause and effect. They provide a villain, sugar, dirt, acidity, and a hero, a specific diet, a supplement, a rigorous cleaning ritual. Science, with its talk of dermatophytes, fungal membranes, and dormant spores, is less narratively satisfying. It offers a treatment, but not always a simple story. This folk wisdom also includes a plethora of home remedies, each with its own devoted followers. Soaks in bleach solution, applications of vodka, pastes made from crushed aspirin. The variety is endless. These treatments often work on the principle of creating an environment so harsh that nothing, not even the fungus, can survive. The risk, of course, is that the skin itself may suffer collateral damage in this chemical warfare. This creative, often desperate, search for solutions is a testament to the profound desire for relief. It is the human spirit refusing to accept a persistent nuisance. Even when the solutions are misguided, the impulse behind them is understandable. The need to feel in control of one's own body, to silence the whisper of irritation with a definitive, satisfying answer. Beneath the modern understanding of this condition lies a deeper, more ancient history, one written not in medical journals, but in the very DNA of the organisms involved. The field of phylogenetics, which maps the evolutionary relationships between species, allows us to trace the lineage of these skin dwelling fungi back through millennia, revealing a story of coevolution and shared journey with humanity. The most common culprits belong to a group called dermatophytes, a word meaning skin plants. These fungi did not originate as human parasites. Their ancestors were saprobes, decomposers that lived in the soil, breaking down keratin-rich materials like shed feathers, hair, and hooves from animal carcasses. They were, and remain, nature's recyclers, essential cleaners in the cycle of life. The evolutionary shift from soil to skin was likely a gradual process as early humans and their hominid ancestors walked barefoot across the landscape. They were in constant contact with these soil-dwelling organisms. A random mutation in one fungal strain may have allowed it to not just survive on shed skin cells, but to actively colonize the living source. This provided a perpetual feast, a stable and abundant environment compared to the unpredictable fortunes of the forest floor. This transition required specific adaptations. The fungus had to evolve mechanisms to adhere to the skin, to withstand the slightly acidic pH of the human surface, and to evade or tolerate the nascent immune responses of its new host. It was a delicate evolutionary dance, one that favored strains that could persist without provoking a devastating immune counterattack. As humans migrated across the globe, so did their fungal companions. The strains that successfully made the jump to humans traveled with them out of Africa and across continents, branching into new genetic lineages that mirrored the paths of human exploration and settlement. Our history is written in their DNA. Some dermatophytes remained generalists, able to infect a wide range of animals. Others became specialists, exquisitely adapted to the human environment. The most common cause of athlete's foot, Trichophyton rubrum, is one such specialist. It is a cosmopolitan species, a fungal echo of human globalization found wherever people live in settled communities. This shared history makes the relationship less one of invasion and more one of ancient, if uncomfortable, familiarity. The fungus is not an alien enemy. It is a distant relative of the soil decomposers that have always been part of our environment. It simply found a new niche on the journey of our species, a niche we provided through our own biological evolution and our social habits. The itch is a reminder of our deep connection to the natural world, a connection that literally hits close to home. The environment we create inside our footwear is a world unto itself, a miniature biome with its own climate, its own inhabitants, and its own ecology. To understand the persistence of this condition, one must appreciate the complex and often surprising ecosystem that exists just millimeters from our skin, sealed within the dark confines of a shoe. This environment is characterized by its extremes. With every step, friction generates heat, raising the temperature significantly. Sweat glands release moisture, which cannot readily evaporate, leading to humidity levels that can near saturation. This combination of heat and humidity creates a tropical microenvironment, a perfect replication of the conditions found on a forest floor after a rain. This climate supports a diverse community of life. Bacteria thrive here, particularly species that specialize in breaking down the salts and organic compounds in sweat. Their metabolic activity is responsible for the familiar smell of well-worn shoes, a pungent signature of a active microbial world. The fungal spores we carry are but one part of this community. In this warm, wet, and nutrient-rich environment, nutrients provided by our shed skin cells and sweat, they find the perfect conditions to germinate and grow. They are not alone here. They are part of a consortium of microorganisms, all competing for space and resources. The physical structure of the shoe itself influences this ecosystem. The insole acts like a sponge, absorbing and retaining moisture. The upper material, if non-breathable, creates a sealed atmosphere. Every time the shoe is put on, the environment is re-inoculated with microbes from the previous wearing, and the cycle of growth begins anew. Attempting to control the fungal element of this ecosystem is therefore a battle against an entire world. Applying an antifungal cream to the skin addresses the visible front of the conflict, but the shoe itself remains a reservoir, a breeding ground ready to repopulate the skin at the first opportunity. This is why management must extend beyond the body to the environment. Antifungal powders work not just on the skin, but by making the interior of the shoe a more hostile place for fungal growth. UV shoe sanitizers, desiccant packets, and simply allowing shoes to dry completely for 24 hours are all strategies aimed at disrupting this hidden biome. The shoe, then, is not merely an accessory, it is an ecological variable. It is a portable environment that we strap to our feet, and its management is as crucial to peace as any direct treatment applied to the skin. The battle is not just on the body, it is in the very world we create around it. The sensation we seek to eliminate, the infamous itch, is itself a fascinating and complex neurological event. It is not a simple signal of damage, but a sophisticated form of communication between the skin and the brain, a message that is often misunderstood and poorly answered by the conscious mind. The itch, known medically as pruritus, begins with the activation of specialized nerve fibers in the skin. These C fibers are different from those that carry pain signals. They are slower, and they are exquisitely tuned to detect the presence of certain chemicals. In the case of our fungal inhabitant, these chemicals are the inflammatory mediators released by the skin's own cells in response to the fungal enzymes and debris. When these nerve fibers are stimulated, they send a signal along the spinal cord to the brain. The brain then interprets this signal and generates the conscious, compelling sensation of an itch. This sensation is designed to draw our attention to a specific spot on our body, to prompt an investigation, and to trigger the scratch reflex. Scratching is the intended response. It is meant to remove an irritant, a biting insect, a splinter, a stray hair. The action of scratching creates a counter-stimulus, a minor pain that temporarily overwhelms the itch signal at the level of the spinal cord. This is the source of the intense, fleeting pleasure of a good scratch. It is the relief of a conflicting signal shutting down the original alarm. But in the case of a fungal infection, scratching is a tragically misguided response. The irritant is not a single, removable object on the surface. It is a widespread chemical presence and a microscopic network embedded in the skin. Scratching does not remove it. It damages the skin's barrier, creating more inflammation, releasing more itch-inducing chemicals, and spreading the fungal elements to new areas. Furthermore, the act of scratching itself can induce mild euphoria. It is thought that the pain of scratching causes the brain to release serotonin, a neurotransmitter involved in mood regulation. This creates a feedback loop. The itch feels good to scratch, and scratching releases chemicals that make us feel good, reinforcing the behavior even as it worsens the underlying condition. This neurological trap explains the madness, the irresistible urge to scratch even when we know it is counterproductive. We are fighting a deep-seated, hardwired reflex with our conscious will, and the reflex is often stronger. The itch is a whisper from the skin that the brain amplifies into a shout, and the body's intended solution only serves to make the whisper louder and more persistent. The very language we use to describe this condition shapes our experience of it. The term athlete's foot itself is a curious piece of nomenclature, linking the problem to a specific, health-conscious subset of the population. It is a strangely positive framing, suggesting vigor and activity rather than the more embarrassing reality of a fungal infection. Other terms are more clinical: tinea pedis, dermatophytosis, words that create distance, transforming a personal irritation into a biological abstract. These terms are useful for doctors and scientists, but they do little to capture the lived experience of the relentless itch, the self-consciousness, the frustration of recurrence. In different cultures and languages, the condition acquires different names, each carrying its own subtle connotations. Some are descriptive, focusing on the symptoms. Others are more colloquial, even humorous, using irony to soften the embarrassment. The variety of names reflects the universality of the experience, but also the universal desire to manage its social meaning. The words we choose in private, however, are often less generous. They can be tinged with frustration, anger, or self-reproach. The internal monologue can become a negative feedback loop. Why won't this go away? What's wrong with me? This self-critical language amplifies the psychological burden, adding emotional distress to physical discomfort. Changing this internal narrative is a powerful, though often overlooked, aspect of management. It involves consciously shifting from a language of blame and failure to a language of neutral observation and biological process. Instead of thinking, my feet are infected again, one might think, the fungal population on my skin has increased. This is not merely semantic games. It is a cognitive reframing that separates the self from the symptom. The condition becomes an event happening on the body, not a definition of the body itself. This linguistic shift allows for a more dispassionate, strategic response. It moves the mind from a state of frustrated helplessness to one of calculated management. The question becomes, what environmental factors allowed the population to increase? Rather than, why am I so dirty? The words we use, both aloud and in our thoughts, have power. They can either amplify the whisper of the itch into a shout of distress, or they can quiet it into a neutral fact, a biological circumstance to be addressed with patience and strategy. The most effective treatment sometimes begins not with a cream, but with a change in vocabulary. The relentless, cyclical nature of this condition can sometimes lead to a state of resigned acceptance, a quiet truce with the persistent inhabitant. After numerous rounds of treatment and recurrence, The initial frustration may give way to a kind of weary coexistence. The itch becomes a background constant, a minor but familiar part of the sensory landscape of the body. This resignation is not the same as surrender. It is rather a pragmatic adjustment of expectations. The goal shifts from total, permanent eradication to effective management and minimization of discomfort. The daily routine may incorporate preventive measures, the meticulous drying, the antifungal powder in the shoes, as habitual, non negotiable acts like brushing teeth. The creams and sprays are kept on hand not as symbols of hoped for cure, but as tools for occasional maintenance used at the first sign of a flare up. The relationship with the condition becomes transactional. It is afforded a certain space, a certain level of attention, but no more. It is contained. In this state, the psychological burden often lessens. The secret loses its power when one stops fighting against it and simply acknowledges its presence. The energy previously spent on frustration and embarrassment is redirected into consistent, low level management. It becomes just another aspect of bodily maintenance, like managing dry skin or dandruff. There is even a strange form of intimacy that can develop. The condition becomes a known quantity, its patterns familiar. One learns to recognize the earliest whispers of a recurrence, the specific feel of the dryness between the fourth and fifth toe that signals a need for increased attention. This knowledge allows for preemptive action, a way of staying one step ahead. This resigned coexistence is not a failure. For many, it is the most sustainable and mentally peaceful path. It represents a harmony of sorts, not a perfect harmony, but a practical one. It is an acknowledgement that the human body is a complex ecosystem, and absolute sterility is neither possible nor desirable. The aim becomes balance, not war. The fungus is not an enemy to be vanquished, but a part of the skin's flora whose population needs to be kept in check. The whisper of the itch is not a siren of distress, but a gentle gauge, a reminder to tend to the environment of the feet. It is a quiet, enduring peace treaty with the self. The experience of this condition, for all its universality, remains intensely personal. It is a private sensation, a personal history of treatments tried and abandoned, a private map of irritation on the skin. Yet within this personal experience lies a connection to something vast and ancient, the timeless interaction between host and organism. To have athlete's foot is to participate in a drama that has unfolded on human skin for millennia. The itch you feel is the same itch felt by a Roman soldier in the baths of Caracalla, by a medieval peasant in a muddy field, by a Victorian clerk in stiff leather boots. The sensation transcends time and culture. It is a tiny, persistent thread in the great tapestry of human experience. This perspective can be a source of odd comfort. The irritation is not a personal failing, but a shared human inheritance. You are not alone in this minor torment. You are part of a vast, silent fellowship of the itchy, a community that spans continents and centuries. The fungal organism itself is a time traveler, a living relic that has accompanied our species on its entire journey. Its success is a testament to its simple, effective design and to the specific environment we provide. In a way, it is a part of us, not in a symbiotic sense, but in a historical one. It is a stowaway that has become a permanent resident. Seeing the condition through this wide lens can shrink its personal significance. The frustration of a recurrence feels smaller when viewed as one small moment in an ancient, ongoing relationship. The embarrassment fades when understood as a universal human experience. This is not to minimize the discomfort, but to contextualize it. The itch is real and distracting, but it is also a whisper from the deep past, a reminder of our animal nature, our connection to the biological world, and the shared minor vulnerabilities of having a human body. Ultimately, the goal is to find a way to live with this reality, to manage the discomfort without being consumed by it, whether through rigorous treatment, environmental control, or resigned coexistence. The path forward involves making peace with this ancient companion and the quiet, persistent whisper it brings. The desire for a definitive natural solution has led many to the world of essential oils, where potent botanical extracts are offered as an alternative to synthetic antifungals. This realm is filled with the fragrant ghosts of plants, each claiming a powerful ability to alter the landscape of the skin. Tea tree oil, distilled from the leaves of the Australian Melaleuca alternifolia tree, is perhaps the most famous of these. Its sharp medicinal scent speaks of camphor and earth. It possesses broad antimicrobial properties, and studies have shown it can be effective against dermatophytes. It works by disrupting the cellular membranes of the fungus, causing its essential contents to leak out. Lavender oil, with its softer, floral aroma, is also known for its antifungal and soothing qualities. It is a gentler warrior, one that not only fights the invasion, but also calms the inflammatory response of the skin, potentially easing the maddening itch. Oregano oil is a more aggressive contender, rich in carvacrol, a compound so potent it must be diluted heavily to avoid skin irritation. It is a brutal, effective weapon, but it must be handled with care. A reminder that natural does not always mean mild. The appeal of these oils is multifaceted. They feel connected to an older, simpler time, a time of traditional wisdom and botanical remedies. The act of applying them is a sensory experience. The smell, the feel, that is often more pleasant than the clinical odor of a pharmaceutical cream. They offer a sense of taking control with something from the natural world. However, this world is not without its complexities. The concentration of active compounds can vary dramatically between brands and batches. The need for dilution requires knowledge and care. Applying some oils neat can cause chemical burns, a far worse fate than the original itch. Their effectiveness, while promising, is often less consistent and less thoroughly studied than that of their pharmaceutical counterparts. They represent a different approach, one of botanical intervention rather than chemical precision. They are a testament to humanity's enduring desire to seek answers in the plant world, to harness the quiet power of nature, to quiet the whisper on the skin. The psychological impact of a persistent physical condition often extends beyond the individual to influence the dynamics of intimacy and close relationships. The feet, often considered a private, even humble part of the body, become a source of self consciousness that can subtly erode the ease of physical closeness. The simple, spontaneous act of touching feet under the covers or of giving or receiving a foot massage can become fraught with hesitation. The mind, hyper aware of the condition, may impose a barrier where none exists from the partner's perspective. There is a fear of judgment, of disgust, of revealing an unattractive flaw. This self imposed isolation is often based on an exaggerated sense of the condition's offensiveness. What feels like a glaring personal failing to the sufferer is often a minor, insignificant detail to a caring partner. Yet, the fear persists, a quiet voice that whispers of inadequacy and prompts withdrawal. Opening up about it requires vulnerability. It means confessing to a minor imperfection, admitting a lack of total control over one's own body. This can be a surprisingly difficult hurdle to cross, precisely because the condition is so culturally linked to embarrassment. It feels like admitting to something shameful. However, this vulnerability can also become a point of connection. Sharing this small secret can be an act of trust, a partner's acceptance, their willingness to understand, to not see it as a reflection of cleanliness or character, can be profoundly liberating. It can dissolve the shame and isolation, transforming the condition from a private burden into a shared, manageable fact. In some cases, it becomes a joint project. Partners may remind each other to apply cream or to wear flip flops in the shared bathroom. This shared management can foster a sense of teamwork, of facing a minor life annoyance together. It is a small thing, but in the economy of a relationship, small things matter. The condition, therefore, becomes a test of intimacy in miniature. It asks a simple question: can I be fully myself with this minor imperfection and still be accepted? The answer almost always is yes. And in that affirmation, the whisper of the itch loses not just its social balsa power, but its emotional weight as well. In the quiet, unseen world of the skin, a complex ecological drama unfolds, a play of competition and coexistence. The fungal organism we focus on is not the only resident. It is one player in a diverse microbial community that calls the human skin home. Its success, failure, is often determined by its interactions with these invisible neighbors. The skin is a vast landscape with deserts, valleys, and moist jungles, each supporting different forms of microscopic life. Bacteria vastly outnumber fungi here, and many of these bacterial species are benign or even beneficial. Some produce their own antimicrobial compounds, creating a defensive perimeter that indirectly protects their human host from other invaders, including problematic fungi. The balance of this ecosystem is delicate. A healthy, diverse skin flora is a form of natural defense. It is a principle known as competitive exclusion. When the good microbes occupy the space and consume the resources, it becomes difficult for bad ones to gain a foothold. The problem arises when this balance is disrupted. The use of broad spectrum antibiotics, for instance, can inadvertently decimate these beneficial bacterial communities, creating a power vacuum that fungi are all too happy to fill. Harsh soaps and excessive washing can strip the skin of its natural oils and alter its pH, creating an environment that is less favorable for protective bacteria and more favorable for fungal growth. The strategy of using probiotics for skin health is based on this ecological principle. The idea is to reintroduce beneficial bacterial strains to the skin to help restore the natural balance and crowd out the problematic fungi. It is a strategy of reinforcement, of strengthening the native population to better defend its territory. This perspective transforms the situation from a simple war of eradication to one of ecological management. The goal is not to create a sterile wasteland on the skin, an impossible task, but to cultivate a healthy, resilient ecosystem that is naturally resistant to domination by any single species, including our persistent fungal inhabitant. It is a more nuanced approach, one that acknowledges our role as stewards of these microscopic worlds we carry with us. The whisper of an itch, then, is not just an alarm, but a report on the state of the ecosystem. It tells us that the balance has shifted, that the environment has changed, and that the community on our skin requires attention and care. The relationship between the mind and the skin is a profound and ancient connection, a pathway through which internal states are written visibly upon the body. Stress, anxiety, and emotional turmoil do not merely reside in the brain. They echo across the landscape of the skin, often amplifying existing conditions. The physiological mechanism is well documented. During periods of stress, the body releases cortisol and other hormones that prepare us for a fight or flight response. One of the many effects of these hormones is to modulate the immune system, often suppressing its more nuanced functions while priming it for inflammation. This can create a double blow for our skin ecosystem. First, a suppressed immune response may be less efficient at keeping the fungal population in check, allowing it to flourish. Second, the primed inflammatory state can make the body's reaction to the fungus more severe, turning a quiet whisper of an itch into a raging shout. Furthermore, stress triggers the sweat glands. Palms become clammy, and feet, already prone to moisture, can become veritable swamps. This creates the perfect environmental condition for the fungus to thrive, providing it with the very element it needs to expand its territory. We quite literally sweat out our anxiety, and the fungus gratefully receives the offering. The mind, already preoccupied with its worries, now has a physical irritation to fixate upon. The itch becomes a focus for nervous energy, a tangible thing to worry about instead of the intangible anxieties of life. Scratching can become a compulsive behavior, a physical manifestation of mental unrest, a way to release nervous tension through action. This creates a vicious cycle. Stress worsens the condition. The condition causes distress and embarrassment, which in turn creates more stress. The mind and the skin become locked in a feedback loop of irritation, each fueling the other. Breaking this cycle requires addressing both ends of the connection. Managing the skin condition with consistent care provides a sense of control and reduces the physical irritant. Meanwhile, practices that calm the mind, meditation, mindfulness, breathing exercises, can lower the overall stress volume, making the skin less reactive and the body a less hospitable host. The path to quiet skin, therefore, sometimes begins with quieting the mind. The cultural history of feet is a long and varied one, often reflecting attitudes toward humility, service, and sometimes revulsion. In many traditions, the foot is the lowest part of the body, both physically and symbolically. It touches the ground, It carries the weight of the entire person, and it is often hidden away in footwear. This low status makes it a fitting place for a condition that is itself considered lowly, embarrassing, and unworthy of serious discussion. The problem is relegated to the shadows. Much like the feet themselves, it is not a noble affliction of the heart or the mind, but a trivial one of the base, physical self. In some religious rituals, the washing of feet is an act of profound humility and service. It is an acknowledgement of the often overlooked part of the body that does the hard, necessary work of bearing the load. To care for the feet of another is to perform an intimate act of grace. Yet in daily life, feet are often seen as unclean, something to be kept private. This duality, sacred and profane, mirrors the experience of the condition itself. It is both a minor physical reality and a source of significant emotional distress. It is a triviality that feels anything but trivial. The condition, by its location, taps into this deep seated cultural ambiguity about feet. The embarrassment it carries is not just about the fungus, it is about the part of the body it affects. It feels like an affirmation of the foot's lowly status, a visible mark of its inherent uncleanness. Understanding this cultural context helps to explain the disproportionate shame associated with such a common problem. The stigma is not just medical, it is symbolic. The foot is the foundation of the body, and when the foundation feels compromised, it can make the whole person feel unstable, embarrassed, and less than whole. To overcome this, one must consciously separate the cultural symbol from the biological fact. The foot is not lowly, it is a marvel of engineering. The condition is not a mark of shame, it is a common biological event. This mental separation is a crucial step in reclaiming comfort and confidence, in silencing not just the physical itch, but the cultural whisper that amplifies it. The phenomenon of recurrence is the defining characteristic of this condition, the reason it transforms from a simple infection into a persistent story. This is not a story with a clear beginning, middle, and end. It is a cyclical narrative with periods of quiet and periods of flare up, a rhythm that can feel inevitable and deeply frustrating. The cycle often begins with a period of neglect. The environment becomes perfect. A long day in hot shoes, a period of increased stress, a lapse in the daily drying ritual. The fungal spores, ever present, seize the opportunity. They germinate, and the hyphae begin their slow spread. The itch returns, first as a whisper, then a persistent murmur. This is the catalyst for action. The creams are retrieved from the back of the cabinet, the powders dusted into socks and shoes. A period of vigilant treatment begins. The itch recedes, the skin appears to heal. A sense of relief and victory emerges. This is the most dangerous part of the cycle. The victory feels complete. The problem appears solved. The treatment is set aside. The vigilance relaxes. But beneath the surface, the deepest spores may have survived. They remain dormant, waiting. The environment inevitably becomes perfect again. The cycle repeats. The recurrence feels like a personal failure, a breaking of a truce. But it is not a failure, it is biology. The fungus is simply doing what it is evolved to do. Given the opportunity, breaking this cycle requires a different approach. It means continuing treatment long after the itch has faded to ensure those dormant spores are eliminated. It means changing the environment permanently through breathable footwear, moisture-wicking socks, and meticulous drying to prevent the conditions from becoming perfect again. It is a shift from reactive to proactive management. It is about changing the underlying rhythm of the relationship. The goal is to make the periods of quiet longer and longer until the cycle is stretched so thin it finally, quietly breaks. The story does not end with a dramatic climax, but with a gradual fading away, a whisper that grows so quiet it is finally lost for good in the silence of the night when the world is quiet and the mind is unoccupied. The whisper of an itch can become a roar. It is in these moments, when trying to surrender to sleep, that the body's minor sensations become amplified, filling the entire field of awareness. The bed, a place of rest, becomes a stage for a private drama. The weight of the sheets on the feet can feel like a provocation. The slightest touch can ignite the urge to scratch. The mind, desperate for sleep, becomes trapped in a battle between ignoring the sensation and giving in to the temporary relief of scratching. This is the cruel paradox of the nighttime itch. The body needs rest to repair itself, to bolster its immune system, to better fight the very condition causing the discomfort. Yet the discomfort itself prevents that rest from coming. It is a closed loop of exhaustion and irritation. The strategies for managing this nightly trial are as much about the mind as they are about the body. A cool shower before bed can lower the skin's temperature and reduce inflammation. Meticulous drying and the application of a calming, non-irritating moisturizer or a light layer of medicated powder can create a barrier of comfort. Creating a ritual around sleep can help signal to the brain that it is time to disengage from the body's sensations. The practice of mindfulness, observing the itch without judgment, without the need to react, can sometimes take away its power. The itch becomes just a sensation, a neutral signal, not a command that must be obeyed. Sometimes, the simple act of getting out of bed, of cooling the feet on a hardwood floor, of breaking the focus, is enough to reset the mind's attention. The goal is not to fight the itch, but to gently guide the awareness away from it, towards the breath, towards the darkness, towards the quiet that precedes sleep. The conquest of the nighttime itch is a small victory, but a significant one. It is the reclamation of peace, the ability to grant oneself the gift of uninterrupted rest. It is a necessary truce in the long campaign, a way to ensure that the body and the mind have the strength to continue. There exists a silent fellowship, a vast and unspoken brotherhood and sisterhood of those who share this minor, persistent burden. It is a community without a name, without meetings, without a manifesto. Its members recognize each other not by a secret handshake, but by a subtle, unspoken understanding, a shared glance of sympathy in a shoe store, a knowing nod at the pharmacy aisle. This fellowship spans the globe. It includes the office worker in Tokyo, carefully dusting antifungal powder into his leather shoes before his commute. It includes the farmer in Brazil, soaking her tired feet in a basin of vinegar water at the end of a long day. It includes the student in Copenhagen, airing out her boots by the radiator, hoping to disrupt the humid environment within. They are bound together by a common, trivial experience, yet one that carries a disproportionate weight of private frustration. They share the same minor calculations, The same moments of hesitation, the same private rituals of management. They understand the unique madness of an it that is both trivial and all consuming. This shared experience, however silent, is a form of connection. It is a reminder of our common humanity, of the universal vulnerabilities of having a body. The billionaire and the janitor may share nothing else in life, but they may both be members of this quiet fellowship, united by a whisper of irritation on the skin. There is comfort in this vast anonymous community. The feeling of isolation, of being the only one afflicted by such a silly problem, is an illusion. The statistics tell the truth. You are not alone. You are one of millions, a single point in a vast constellation of minor human suffering and resilience. This perspective can be a powerful antidote to shame. It universalizes the experience. It transforms it from a personal failing into a simple fact of human existence, like getting a headache or a common cold. It is something that happens to bodies, not a judgment on character. The fellowship does not rally for a cure or march for awareness. Its membership is passive, its bonds unspoken, but its existence is a quiet testament to the fact that we are all in this together, navigating the world in these imperfect, leaky, sometimes itchy vessels, doing our best to find comfort and grace along the way. The final victory over this condition is rarely announced with a fanfare. It does not end with a dramatic cure, but with a gradual forgetting. It is a story that concludes not because the last page is turned, but because the book is slowly, quietly set aside and never picked up again. One day, you realize that the bottle of cream in the cabinet has expired. The powder has clumped into a solid brick from disuse. You cannot recall the last time you felt the need to reach for them. The daily rituals of vigilance, the meticulous drying, the careful choice of socks, have become so ingrained that they are no longer conscious acts of defense, but simple habits of hygiene. The environment of the foot has been permanently altered. The climate is now consistently drier, less hospitable. The fungal population, deprived of its perfect conditions and hounded by consistent, long-term management, has dwindled to undetectable levels. The spores that remain are too few, too scattered to mount a new campaign. The body's ecosystem has found a new, stable balance. The immune system, while still largely ignoring the outer frontier, is no longer constantly provoked into a low-grade inflammatory response. The skin's barrier is intact, its integrity restored. The itch, that constant whisper, has fallen silent. You no longer scan for it, no longer anticipate its return. The mental energy once devoted to managing the irritation has been freed for other things. The feet, once a source of distracted awareness, have faded back into the comfortable anonymity of the body. This is the quiet resolution. There is no certificate of cure, no final all clear. There is only the absence of a sensation that was once so familiar. The condition simply ceases to be a part of your story. It becomes a past chapter, a problem you once had, a minor footnote in the history of your body. The victory is not in the killing of every last spore, an impossible task, but in the creation of a state where they are irrelevant. They are like seeds scattered on concrete. They may exist, but they cannot grow. The whisper is not gone from the world, but it is gone from your skin and from your mind. And that is peace. For those who seek a deeper understanding, the journey does not end with personal relief. It expands into a wider curiosity about the unseen world we inhabit and the organisms with which we share our lives. The persistent itch becomes a gateway to microbiology, to ecology, to a new way of seeing the world. The simple act of looking at one's own skin becomes an exercise in imagination. You begin to picture the landscape, the rolling hills of skin cells, the forests of hair follicles, the microscopic life teeming in the valleys and plains. You are not a single entity, but a walking ecosystem, a planet host to countless forms of life. The fungus itself transforms from a villain into a fascinating life form. You learn about its life cycle, its resilience, its simple, hungry purpose. It is not evil. It is amoral. It is a consumer of dead matter, a recycler that has simply found an abundant, stationary source of its preferred food. This ecological perspective fosters a sense of wonder, even respect, the organism's patience, its ability to survive in a dormant state for years, its precise enzymatic machinery. These are marvels of evolution. It is a successful life form, perfectly adapted to its peculiar niche, us. This shift in perspective does not mean you welcome the itch, but it does remove the anger and frustration. The relationship becomes less personal. You are not being attacked, you are being inhabited. It is a biological process, not a personal affront. This knowledge can be applied to other aspects of life. It cultivates a general curiosity about the hidden workings of the world. The mold on bread, the bloom in a pond, the rich smell of soil, all become connected to this larger understanding of life as a process of consumption, growth, and decay. The quiet companion, therefore, leaves behind a legacy beyond the physical. It leaves behind a changed way of seeing. It teaches humility, reminding us that we are not separate from nature, but a part of it. A warm, moist, nutrient rich landscape walking through the world, hosting a universe of life, both seen and unseen. In the end, the story of this condition is a small story. It is a footnote in the medical texts, a minor annoyance in the grand narrative of a human life. But within its smallness, it contains multitudes. It is a story of biology, of evolution, of psychology, and of culture. It is a story about the body's magnificent, yet imperfect, design, about the evolutionary trade offs that leave us vulnerable to the smallest of life forms. It is about the gap between our biological heritage and our Mudgerson shoe wearing lives. It is a story about the mind's relationship with the body, about how a minor sensation can be amplified by attention and distorted by shame. It is about the search for control and the peace that comes from acceptance and strategic management. It is a story about connection, about the silent fellowship of those who share a common, trivial burden. It is about intimacy and the vulnerability of revealing our small imperfections to those we love. And finally, it is a about perspective, about learning to see a personal irritation through a wider lens, ecological, historical, evolutionary, about finding fascination where there was once only frustration. The goal of this narrative was never to provide a single, definitive cure. It was to sit with the experience, to unpack it, to understand its layers and its echoes. It was to transform the itch from a mere symptom into a subject of contemplation, to quiet the madness by replacing frustration with understanding. The whisper may return. The conditions may one day be right again. But now, armed with knowledge and perspective, it will be met not with panic or shame, but with a calm, strategic response. It will be a familiar noise, not a terrifying unknown. So we come to the close of this particular exploration. The story is told. The body is at peace. The mind is quiet. The world is full of whispers. But for now, this one has faded, leaving only the gentle, reassuring silence of a balanced ecosystem and a mind at rest. The psychological weight of a persistent physical condition often extends beyond the individual to influence the dynamics of intimacy and close relationships. The feet, often considered a private, even humble part of the body, become a source of self consciousness that can subtly erode the ease of physical closeness. The simple, spontaneous act of touching feet under the covers, or of giving or receiving a foot massage, can become fraught with hesitation. The mind, hyper aware of the condition, may impose a barrier where none exists from the partner's perspective. There is a fear of judgment, of disgust, of revealing an unattractive flaw. This self imposed isolation is often based on an exaggerated sense of the condition's offensiveness. What feels like a glaring personal failing to the sufferer is often a minor, insignificant depot to a caring partner. Yet the fear persists, a quiet voice that whispers of inadequacy and prompts withdrawal. Opening up about it requires vulnerability. It means confessing to a minor imperfection, admitting a lack of total control over one's own body. This can be a surprisingly difficult hurdle to cross, precisely because the condition is so culturally linked to embarrassment. It feels like admitting to something shameful. However, this vulnerability can also become a point of connection. Sharing this small secret can be an act of trust, a partner's acceptance, their willingness to understand, to not see it as a reflection of cleanliness or character, can be profoundly liberating. It can dissolve the shame and isolation, transforming the condition from a private burden into a shared, manageable fact. In some cases, it becomes a joint project. Partners may remind each other to apply cream or to wear flip flops in the shared bathroom. This shared management can foster a sense of teamwork, of facing a minor life annoyance together. It is a small thing, but in the economy of a relationship, small things matter. The condition, therefore, becomes a test of intimacy in miniature. It asks a simple question: can I be fully myself with this minor imperfection and still be accepted? The answer almost always is yes. The cultural history of feet is a long and varied one, often reflecting attitudes toward humility, service, and sometimes revulsion. In many traditions, the foot, the foot is the lowest part of the body, both physically and symbolically. It touches the ground. It carries the weight of the entire person, and it is often hidden away in footwear. This low status makes it a fitting place for a condition that is itself considered lowly, embarrassing, and unworthy of serious discussion. The problem is relegated to the shadows, much like the feet themselves. It is not a noble affliction of the heart or the mind, but a trivial one of the base, physical self. In some religious rituals, the washing of feet is an act of profound humility and service. It is an acknowledgement of the often overlooked part of the body that does the hard, necessary work of bearing the load. To care for the feet of another is to perform an intimate act of grace. Yet, in daily life, feet are often seen as unclean, something to be kept private. This duality, sacred and profane, mirrors the experience of the condition itself. It is both a minor physical reality and a source of significant emotional distress. It is a triviality that feels anything but trivial. The condition, by its location, taps into this deep seated cultural ambiguity about feet. The embarrassment it carries is not just about the fungus, it is about the part of the body it affects. It feels like an affirmation of the foot's lowly status, a visible mark of its inherent uncleanness. Understanding this cultural context helps to explain the disproportionate shame associated with such a common problem. The stigma is not just medical, it is symbolic. The foot is the foundation of the body, and when the foundation feels compromised, it can make the whole person feel unstable, embarrassed, and less than whole. To overcome this, one must consciously separate the cultural symbol from the biological fact. The foot is not lowly, it is a marvel of engineering. The condition is not a mark of shame, it is a common biological event. This mental separation is a crucial step in reclaiming comfort and confidence, in silencing not just the physical itch, but the cultural whisper that amplifies it. The biological mechanisms underlying the condition represent a fascinating dance of chemistry and adaptation at the cellular level. The fungal cell wall, a structure composed of chitin and other complex polymers, serves as both its armor and its potential Achilles' heel. This wall is fundamentally different from the cellular membranes of human cells, providing a precise target for therapeutic agents. The most common antifungal compounds work by inhibiting the synthesis of ergosterol, a crucial sterol that maintains the integrity and fluidity of the fungal cell membrane. Without adequate ergosterol, the membrane becomes porous and leaky, causing essential cellular components to seep out and leading to the eventual death of the fungal cell. This targeted approach showcases the elegance of modern pharmacology, exploiting biochemical differences between host and invader. The human body relies on cholesterol for membrane stability, not ergosterol, allowing these medications to disrupt the fungus without causing significant harm to human tissues. The process is not instantaneous, but rather a gradual dismantling of the fungal infrastructure. As the cell membranes become compromised, the intricate network of hyphae begins to break down. Its ability to absorb nutrients and secrete destructive enzymes faltering. The visible improvement on the skin's surface, the reduction in redness, the easing of scaling, is merely the macroscopic reflection of this microscopic biochemical warfare. Yet the fungus is not a passive victim in this process. Through random mutations and evolutionary pressure, some strains can develop resistance, altering the target enzymes or developing efflux pumps to expel the antifungal agents. This arms race between human ingenuity and fungal adaptation underscores the dynamic nature of the relationship. It is a reminder that even the simplest organisms possess a powerful drive to survive, and that our interventions, however sophisticated, must be used wisely and consistently to maintain their effectiveness. The battle is won not through a single decisive blow, but through sustained, precise pressure that acknowledges and respects the adaptive capabilities of our microscopic opponent. The personal narrative of dealing with a persistent skin condition often becomes interwoven with memories of specific times and places, creating a private history written not in years, but in flare ups and remissions. The first memorable itch might be associated with a childhood summer camp, the communal showers and shared cabin floors, providing the perfect environment for initial exposure. Another chapter might be marked by a particularly stressful period in adolescence, the body's response to anxiety manifesting as a worsening of symptoms on the skin. The condition becomes a personal timeline, its fluctuations mapping onto the broader story of a life. The year of the great itch during final exams at university, the time it cleared up remarkably during a beach vacation, perhaps due to the constant exposure to sunlight and salt water, the frustrating recurrence that coincided with starting a new job that required formal footwear. These are not just medical events, they are personal milestones, remembered with a mixture of amusement and irritation. This personal history is often accompanied by a parallel history of treatments, a cabinet full of half used tubes and bottles, each representing a burst of hope and a subsequent lapse in routine. The distinctive medicinal smell of a particular cream can instantly transport one back to a specific apartment, a specific time of life. The sight of a certain brand of powder might recall a parent's well intentioned advice given decades ago. This long term relationship with the condition shapes habits and preferences in subtle ways. It influences the choice of vacations, beaches over spas, the type of socks purchased, moisture wicking blends over cotton, and even the posture in which one sits, preferring to curl up barefoot rather than stretch out. It becomes a part of one's identity, a minor but persistent character trait. The person who is always prepared, who always has a spare pair of socks, who never walks barefoot in a hotel room. This personal narrative, for all its minor annoyances, is also a story of adaptation and resilience. It is about learning to manage a recurring problem, about developing strategies and routines, about accepting a small, persistent part of one's physical reality without allowing it to define one's entire existence. It is, in its own small way, a story of triumph. The phenomenon of phantom itch represents one of the most perplexing chapters in this story, a sensation that persists long after all visible signs of the condition have vanished, and medical tests confirm the absence of active fungal elements. This neurological echo occurs when the brain, having become so accustomed to processing signals of irritation from the nerves in the feet, continues to interpret normal sensory information as the familiar itch. It is a habit of perception, a pathway in the brain that has been worn deep by repetition and now continues to fire without its original trigger. This experience can be deeply frustrating, creating doubt about the effectiveness of treatment or even one's own sanity. The mind knows the fungus is gone, yet the body insists on feeling its presence. This disconnect between knowledge and sensation highlights the powerful role the nervous system plays in our experience of physical reality. Our perception is not a perfect mirror of the external world, but a constructed interpretation, and sometimes that construction retains ghosts of past experiences. The management of phantom itch requires a retraining of the nervous system. Techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy can be useful, helping to break the cycle of anxious anticipation that often accompanies the sensation. Mindfulness meditation teaches observation without reaction, allowing the brain to gradually learn that the signal is a false alarm that does not require action. The simple act of gently rubbing the area without scratching can provide a new sensory input that helps to rewire the neural pathway, teaching the nerves to send a different message. Over time, as the brain receives consistent feedback that the itch signal is not correlated with any actual threat or irritation, the phantom sensation gradually fades. The neural pathway, unused, begins to weaken. The whisper, once so persistent, finally falls silent, not because the enemy was defeated, but because the sentry finally learned that the war was over. The collective human effort expended on managing this condition represents a significant, though largely invisible, economic and temporal investment. Consider the global production of antifungal creams, powders, sprays, and oral medications, factories running shifts to produce millions of tubes and bottles, shipping containers crossing oceans, pharmacy shelves constantly restocked. The research and development behind each new formulation represents countless hours of scientific labor. Then there is the personal time investment, the minutes spent each day meticulously drying between toes, applying treatments, dusting powder into shoes, shopping for specialized footwear and socks. Multiply these minutes by the number of people affected and by the days of their lives, and the sum becomes staggering. A vast ocean of time devoted to this single, minor aspect of human existence. This investment extends to the mental energy consumed by the condition, the moments of distraction at work, the calculations before social events, the mental bandwidth occupied by managing the irritation and the embarrassment. This cognitive load, while small for any individual, represents a collective tax on human attention on a global scale. Yet within this expenditure lies a testament to human resilience and adaptability. This investment represents our refusal to surrender to discomfort, our endless capacity for problem solving, even for problems that are not life threatening, but merely life irritating. It is a monument to our commitment to comfort and well being, however minor the discomfort may be. The factories producing the creams, the scientists developing new compounds, the people diligently performing their foot care rituals, all are participants in a silent, global collaboration against a universal nuisance. It is an uncoordinated but remarkably persistent effort, a distributed network of resistance against a distributed network of fungal life. We may fight our battles in private, but we are never truly fighting alone. In the natural world, beyond human concerns, the fungal organisms that cause this condition continue their quiet existence according to their own ancient rhythms. They do not seek to harm, nor do they plot invasion. They simply are, perfectly adapted to their ecological niche, which unfortunately overlaps with our own desire for comfort. In soil and decaying matter, these fungi play crucial roles as decomposers, breaking down complex keratinous materials that would otherwise accumulate. They are nature's recyclers, essential to the cycle of life and death. Their ability to digest tough, durable proteins makes them invaluable cleaners in the ecosystems they inhabit. Our human discomfort is merely collateral damage in their pursuit of survival, an unintended consequence of their biological success. They have evolved to consume dead matter, and we happen to be walking repositories of that very material, particularly on our feet. The conflict is one of proximity and opportunity, not malice. This perspective invites a certain ecological humility. It reminds us that we are part of a larger biological system, not separate from it. Our bodies represent habitats, resources, and environments for countless other species. Some of these relationships are symbiotic and beneficial, others are neutral, and a few, like this one, are uncomfortably one-sided. Seeing the fungus in this light, as an amoral participant in the great web of life rather than a personal affliction, can diminish the frustration it causes. It becomes easier to manage something understood as a natural process rather than fight something perceived as a personal attack. The goal shifts from eradication to ecological boundary setting, from war to landscape management. We can respect the fungus's role in nature while still taking firm measures to exclude it from our personal ecosystem. This balanced view acknowledges our place in the natural world while asserting our right to comfort and well-being within our own skin. The experience of finally achieving lasting relief brings with it a peculiar form of nostalgia for the struggle itself. The daily rituals of vigilance, the familiar containers of cream, the specific sensation of the itch all become part of a past chapter that, for all its frustration, carried a certain familiarity. The mind, which had organized so much behavior around managing the condition, must now adjust to its absence. This adjustment period can feel strangely empty, as if a minor but persistent life purpose has been fulfilled and retired. The cabinet looks bare without its collection of treatments. The bedtime routine feels shorter without the meticulous drying ritual. The feet, once a constant source of awareness, fade back into the comfortable anonymity of the body. This nostalgic feeling is not a desire to return to the discomfort, but rather a recognition that even negative experiences become woven into the fabric of our identity. They shape our habits, our preferences, our ways of moving through the world. When they depart, they leave behind a space that must be filled with new patterns, new routines. This transition represents a small victory of adaptation, the ability to release strategies that are no longer needed, to let go of defensive postures when the threat has passed. It is a practice in being present to the current reality rather than living in anticipation of a problem that may not return. The space left by the departed condition gradually fills with other things, with attention to different aspects of life, with mental energy freed for more meaningful pursuits. The whisper is replaced by silence, and then that silence itself becomes the new normal, the new background against which life is lived. The scientific investigation into this common condition has yielded insights that extend far beyond dermatology, contributing to our broader understanding of the human condition, understanding of human microbe interactions, antibiotic resistance, and ecological balance on the human body. The stubborn persistence of fungal infections has driven innovation in antifungal medications, leading to drugs that are more targeted, more effective, and with fewer side effects. Research into why the immune system responds so mildly to these fungi has revealed fascinating aspects of immune tolerance and the body's prioritization of threats. This research has implications for understanding autoimmune diseases, allergies, and other conditions where the immune system's response is mismatched to the actual threat. The study of biofilm formation, the way fungal communities create protective matrices that resist treatment, has applications in numerous fields, from dentistry into industrial processing. The strategies developed to penetrate these biofilms on the skin have informed approaches to dealing with bacterial biofilms on medical implants and equipment. Even the psychological research into the itch scratch cycle has contributed to our understanding of compulsive behaviors and the neural pathways of habit formation. The condition serves as a relatively simple model for understanding how physical sensations can become entangled with emotional states and behavioral patterns. Thus, what appears to be a minor, trivial health issue has served as a window into broader biological and psychological processes. The millions of hours and dollars spent researching and treating this condition have not been wasted on a mere nuisance, but have advanced our understanding of human health in significant, if unexpected, ways. The humble foot fungus, in its persistent, irritating way, has pushed science forward, making contributions to human knowledge that belie its trivial reputation. It reminds us that important insights often come from studying the mundane, the common, the everyday problems that affect millions of people. As we bring this extensive exploration to its gentle conclusion, we return to where we began, with the human foot, that marvelous structure that worries us through our lives, and the quiet, persistent whisper that sometimes emerges from its surface. We have journeyed through microbiology and psychology, through history and personal narrative, through treatment and acceptance. The story of this condition is ultimately a story about boundaries, about the permeable boundary between our bodies and the world, about the neural boundaries between sensation and perception, about the emotional boundaries between private experience and social sharing. It is about learning to maintain these boundaries with wisdom and consistency. The most effective approach combines knowledge with practice, understanding the biological reality of the condition while implementing the daily habits that prevent its recurrence. It involves treating the body with care while refusing to let minor physical realities dominate emotional life. It means acknowledging the condition without being defined by it. The peace that comes from successful management is not the dramatic peace of a battle won, but the quiet peace of a border well patrolled, an ecosystem in balance. It is the satisfaction of a problem understood and managed, if not completely eliminated. It is the comfort of knowing that should the whisper return, you possess the knowledge and tools to quiet it again. And so we arrive at a place of acceptance and capability. The feet, once a source of distraction, return to their proper role as faithful carriers, rarely noticed but always present. The mind, freed from its preoccupation, turns its attention to the wider world. The whisper falls silent, not because it has been utterly destroyed, but because it has been heard, understood, and answered with consistent, compassionate care. In the quiet spaces between wakefulness and sleep, the body often speaks its truth in whispers and sensations. The story of this condition lives not just in textbooks or medicine cabinets, but in the intimate awareness of one's own skin. It exists in that moment when you first slide off your shoes at day's end, in the conscious breath, before removing socks in a shared space, in the private calculation of whether to accept an invitation that might require revealing your feet. These small moments form a hidden geography of human experience, a landscape of minor hesitations and private resolutions. They are the unspoken rituals that structure days and interactions, the invisible architecture of life with a persistent physical reality. The condition shapes behavior in subtle ways, creating patterns and habits that become so ingrained they feel like natural parts of personality rather than adaptations to circumstance. This personal geography includes the precise way one dries between toes after showering, the particular brand of cotton socks that feels most comfortable, the strategic application of powder before a long day in closed shoes. It includes the memory of which friends' houses have carpeting versus hardwood floors, the preference for beach vacations over pool parties, the always packed travel kit with its familiar tubes and bottles. These adaptations represent the human capacity for accommodation, the ability to make space for inconvenience without being entirely defined by it. They are the quiet negotiations we make with our bodies, the compromises that allow us to move through the world with minimal disruption. The goal is not perfection, but functional coexistence, a practical harmony between the body's realities and life's demands. In this accommodation lies a form of wisdom, the understanding that complete control is an illusion, that all bodies have their peculiarities and vulnerabilities, and that dignity resides not in flawlessness, but in how we manage our particular set of circumstances. The small daily acts of care become not burdens, but gentle affirmations of self-regard. The language of medicine often fails to capture the lived experience of common conditions, reducing complex personal realities to sterile terminology and treatment protocols. The term tinea pedis conveys nothing of the midnight itch that disrupts sleep, nor of the social anxiety that accompanies shoe removal. Antifungal treatment suggests nothing of the hopeful application of cream, the familiar medicinal smell, the waiting for relief. This gap between clinical description and personal experience creates a space where folklore and personal mythology grow. People develop their own terms for the condition, their own theories about what causes flare-ups, their own home remedies passed down through families or discovered through experimentation. This folk knowledge represents a human attempt to make sense of experience, to create narrative and meaning where official language offers only classification. The stories people tell about their condition reveal much about how we understand our bodies and their vulnerabilities. Some narratives frame it as a battle against an invading enemy. Others see it as a lesson in patience and self-care. Still others view it as a humbling reminder of our connection to the natural world with its microbes and ecosystems. These personal narratives matter because they shape how people engage with treatment and management. Someone who sees the condition as a personal failing may approach it with shame and inconsistency. Someone who views it as a biological process may approach it with calm persistence. The story we tell ourselves about our bodies influences how we care for them. Bridging the gap between medical and personal understanding requires a language that acknowledges both the biological reality and the human experience. It means speaking of fungi and enzymes, while also making space for the frustration of recurrence and the relief of effective management. The most healing approach often combines scientific knowledge with personal wisdom, respecting both the microscope and the lived reality. The experience of this condition varies across cultures and climates, reflecting different footwear traditions, bathing practices, and social attitudes toward feet. In cultures where shoes are rarely worn, the condition may be less common due to better air circulation, though other foot infections might take its place. In colder climates with heavy footwear, the challenge of moisture management becomes paramount. Attitudes towards a treatment also vary culturally. Some traditions emphasize natural remedies and dietary adjustments. Others prioritize pharmaceutical solutions. The role of traditional healers versus medical doctors, the availability of over the counter treatments, the cost of medications, all these factors influence how people in different parts of the world experience and manage the condition. The social meaning of feet themselves differs across cultures. In some societies, feet are considered deeply private, almost taboo. In others, they are viewed matter of factly. These cultural attitudes affect how comfortable people feel discussing foot related health issues, seeking treatment, or even examining their own feet regularly. Climate change may be altering the global distribution and prevalence of fungal skin conditions. As temperatures warm and humidity patterns shift, regions that previously saw few cases may experience increases. The fungi themselves may evolve in response to changing conditions, potentially developing new characteristics or patterns of resistance. Despite these variations, the core experience remains universal: the itch, the frustration, the search for relief. The details differ, but the fundamental human experience crosses cultural and geographical boundaries. This shared reality reminds us of our common biological nature, our universal vulnerability to the small organisms that share our world. The condition serves as a humble reminder that despite our cultural differences and technological advancements, we remain physical beings subject to the same biological processes that have always affected human bodies. Our shared vulnerability becomes a point of connection, a universal experience that transcends borders and backgrounds. The management of this condition represents a continuous process of learning and adaptation, a slowly accumulating wisdom about one's own body and its responses. Over time, through observation and experience, people develop a deep familiarity with their personal patterns. Which factors trigger flare ups? Which treatments work best? How to recognize the earliest signs of recurrence. This knowledge is often highly specific and personal. One person learns that wearing certain materials against their skin inevitably causes problems. Another discovers that a particular food seems to correlate with increased symptoms. Another finds that stress manifests first on their skin before they're consciously aware of feeling anxious. This process of self observation cultivates a valuable form of bodily literacy, the ability to read the subtle signals of one's own physical being. The condition becomes a teacher, training attention toward aspects of health that might otherwise go unnoticed. The need to manage it fosters a heightened awareness of the body's rhythms and responses. This literacy often extends to broader health awareness. People who must pay close attention to their feet may become more generally attentive to their physical well being. The daily ritual of foot inspection becomes a moment of connection with the body, a regular check in that can reveal other issues early, changes in circulation, skin conditions elsewhere, or signs of systemic health issues. The condition thus becomes an unlikely teacher of self care and bodily awareness. The very persistence that makes it frustrating also makes it an effective trainer of attention. The lessons learned through managing it, consistency, observation, prevention, often apply to other areas of health and well being. What begins as a nuisance can evolve into a practice of mindfulness and self knowledge. The daily attention to the body's boundaries and needs becomes a meditation on embodiment itself, on what it means to inhabit a physical form that exists in constant conversation with its environment. The relationship between this condition and human creativity manifests in unexpected ways, revealing our species' remarkable ability to generate solutions and adaptations. The marketplace offers a startling array of products, from ultrasonic shoe sanitizers to bamboo fiber socks with silver ion treatments, all representing human ingenuity applied to this ancient problem. Every new formulation of cream, every innovative delivery system, every moisture wicking fabric represents someone's attempt to solve this persistent puzzle. This creative response extends beyond commercial products to personal inventions and adaptations. People devise their own drying techniques after showers, create custom foot soak recipes, modify their footwear for better ventilation. Some become amateur mycologists, studying the enemy to better understand how to manage it. Others become strategists, developing elaborate systems for shoe rotation and sock management. The condition has even inspired artistic expression, comedic routines about the itch, paintings that play with the concept of things hidden and revealed, writings that use the condition as a metaphor for other kinds of persistent, minor irritations in life. What begins as a physical nuisance becomes raw material for creativity and humor. This creative engagement transforms the experience from passive suffering to active problem solving. The very act of creating a solution, whether a new product or a personal strategy, restores a sense of agency and control. The condition becomes not just a problem to be endured, but a challenge to be met with imagination and resourcefulness. The history of our response to this condition mirrors human technological development more broadly. Observation leading to understanding, understanding leading to intervention, intervention leading to new problems and new solutions. It is a miniature example of the endless dance between human needs and human ingenuity. In this light, the condition appears not just as an affliction, but as a catalyst for creativity, a small, persistent spark that has ignited countless small innovations, personal adaptations, and moments of inventive problem solving across human history and around the world. The experience of this condition changes over the seasons, creating an annual rhythm that many come to know intimately. Summer brings both challenges and opportunities. The warmth and humidity create perfect growing conditions, but the ability to go barefoot or wear open shoes also provides more opportunities for drying and air circulation. The beach becomes both a social challenge and a therapeutic environment, with sunlight and salt water offering natural antifungal benefits. Autumn often brings a shift as closed shoes return and feet sweat against socks. The heating systems turned on in buildings create dry air that can cause skin to crack, creating new entry points for infection. The rhythm of the school year and return to work routines may disrupt the careful management practices of summer. Winter presents the greatest challenge for many: heavy, insulating footwear worn for long hours, thick socks, and less opportunity for barefoot time indoors. The contrast between cold outdoor air and heated indoor environments can cause excessive sweating. The holiday season, with its travel and changed routines, often disrupts careful management habits. Spring brings renewal, both in nature and in foot care routines. As weather warms and shoes become more open, the environment becomes less hospitable to fungal growth. The promise of summer ahead encourages renewed attention to management, a spring cleaning of sorts for one's foot health. This seasonal rhythm connects the personal experience of the condition to the larger turning of the year, to the natural cycles of growth and dormancy. The state of one's feet becomes a kind of bodily calendar, marking the passage of time through the rise and fall of symptoms. This connection to natural cycles can provide a certain comfort, the understanding that difficult periods will pass, that environments will change, that nothing remains static forever. The condition becomes not a permanent state, but a process that ebbs and flows with the seasons, each bringing its own challenges and opportunities for management. The quality of attention we bring to minor health issues, like this one, reveals much about our relationship with our bodies as a whole. For some, it becomes an obsession, a focal point for health anxiety, with constant checking and worrying. For others, it becomes something to ignore or deny until symptoms become unavoidable. The healthiest approach often lies somewhere between these extremes: attentive but not anxious, proactive but not obsessive. This balanced attention represents a form of bodily respect, acknowledging the condition without allowing it to dominate one's mental landscape. It means developing a consistent management routine that becomes as automatic as brushing teeth, requiring minimal conscious attention once established. It means listening to the body's signals without becoming ruled by them. This quality of attention can extend to other areas of health, creating a general practice of mindful self-care. The lessons learned through managing a persistent, minor condition, consistency, prevention, observation, can apply to nutrition, exercise, stress management, and other aspects of well-being. The condition thus becomes a teacher of bodily awareness, training us in the art of paying appropriate attention to our physical being. It reminds us that we inhabit these bodies continuously, that they require care and attention, and that small, consistent practices often yield better results than dramatic interventions. This mindful approach transforms health management from a chore to be completed into a practice to be cultivated, an ongoing relationship with one's physical self based on knowledge, respect, and consistent care. The condition becomes not just a problem to be solved, but an opportunity to develop a healthier relationship with one's body as a whole. The ultimate goal becomes not just the absence of symptoms, but the presence of a thoughtful, attentive, caring relationship with one's physical being, a relationship that acknowledges limitations and vulnerabilities while also recognizing the body's remarkable capacities for healing and adaptation. The scientific understanding of this common condition continues to evolve, with research revealing new complexities in the relationship between humans and their microbial inhabitants. Recent studies explore the skin microbiome as an ecological system, looking at how different microbial species interact with each other and with human cells. The focus has shifted from simply eliminating bad microbes to fostering a healthy microbial community that resists domination by any single species. This ecological approach has led to investigations into probiotic treatments for skin conditions, not just consuming probiotics orally, but applying them directly to the skin to support beneficial microbial communities. The idea is to create a resilient ecosystem on the skin that naturally suppresses fungal overgrowth, much like a diverse forest resists takeover by any single plant species. Genetic research is revealing why some people seem more susceptible than others, identifying variations in immune response genes and skin barrier functions that may affect vulnerability. This could eventually lead to personalized approaches to prevention and treatment based on individual genetic profiles. Nanotechnology offers new delivery systems for antifungal agents, allowing them to penetrate deeper into skin layers or nail plates more effectively. Some researchers are exploring light-based therapies that can kill fungi without damaging the human tissue. These advancing understandings reflect a broader shift in medicine toward ecological thinking, viewing the human body not as a sterile fortress to be defended, but as a complex ecosystem to be balanced. The condition becomes a case study in this new paradigm, a testing ground for approaches that respect both human health and microbial ecology. The future of management may lie not in stronger antifungal weapons, but in smarter ecological management, creating conditions on the skin that naturally discourage fungal dominance while supporting healthy microbial diversity. This approach acknowledges that we cannot eliminate our microbial companions, but we can learn to live with them in better balance. The experience of finding a truly effective management strategy after long struggle brings a particular quality of quiet satisfaction, the pleasure of a problem understood and finally brought under control. This satisfaction comes not from dramatic victory, but from consistent application of knowledge, from the gradual accumulation of small, right actions that eventually tip the balance. This satisfaction is deepened by the memory of previous frustrations, the failed treatments, the recurrent symptoms, the moments of embarrassment and frustration. The contrast between past struggle and present comfort amplifies the pleasure of success. What might seem like a small achievement to others feels significant to those who have lived with the condition's persistence. This experience builds practical wisdom, the kind of knowledge that comes not from books, but from lived experience. It's the understanding of which strategies work consistently, which products deliver results, which habits make the real difference. This wisdom becomes part of one's personal healthcare knowledge, applicable to other areas of life. The satisfaction also brings a sense of self-efficacy, the confidence that comes from successfully managing a persistent challenge. This confidence can extend to other health issues, other life challenges. If one can solve this stubborn problem, perhaps others can be solved as well. This hard-won knowledge often becomes something shared quietly with others who struggle, a recommended product mentioned discreetly, a strategy offered sympathetically. These small exchanges create moments of connection and mutual support, a quiet network of shared wisdom about this common experience. The ultimate satisfaction comes not just from symptom relief, but from the sense of having developed a sustainable, effective relationship with one's own body, a relationship based on understanding rather than frustration, on consistent care rather than emergency interventions. The condition becomes not a curse, but a teacher of self care and persistence. As we approach the final sections of this extensive exploration, the condition reveals its ultimate paradox, that a thing so small and trivial can serve as a gateway to larger understandings of biology, of ecology, of human psychology, and culture. What begins as a minor physical irritation becomes an opportunity to contemplate the complex relationships between humans and microbes, between individuals and societies, between bodies and environments. This small story contains within it the larger story of human adaptation to our environments, to our own biology, to the other life forms that share our world. It illustrates the endless human capacity for problem solving, for developing strategies and technologies to improve our comfort and well being. The condition reminds us of our animal nature, that we are physical beings subject to biological processes, that we inhabit ecosystems rather than standing apart from them. The whisper of the itch connects us to the soil dwelling fungi from which our skin dwelling varieties evolved, grounding us in the natural world even as we attempt to manage our distance from it. This experience also highlights the social dimension of physical being, how our bodies exist in relation to others, how cultural meanings become attached to physical realities, how something as simple as a foot infection can influence social interactions and self perception. Perhaps most importantly, the long relationship with this condition teaches lessons in persistence and acceptance, the value of consistent care over time, the wisdom of working with rather than against our biological realities, the peace that comes from finding balance rather than seeking total victory. In the end, this minor affliction offers major lessons about what it means to be an embodied creature in a microbial world, about caring for ourselves with consistency and compassion, and about finding grace and dignity in the management of life's inevitable imperfections and irritations. The moon casts its pale light through the window, illuminating the quiet room where the day's concerns have finally been set aside. In this stillness, the body prepares for renewal, for the nightly repair work that continues unnoticed while consciousness rests. The management of the condition finds its final daily expression in the rituals that precede sleep, the careful washing, the thorough drying, the application of treatments if needed. These nighttime rituals become a form of meditation, a final act of care for the physical self before surrendering to unconsciousness. The attention to the feet, to the spaces between the toes, to the condition of the skin. This focused awareness becomes a practice in mindfulness, a way of grounding oneself in the present moment through attention to physical sensation. The quality of this attention matters. When performed with resentment or frustration, the rituals feel like burdens. When approached with care and acceptance, they become acts of self compassion, a gentle tending to the body that has carried you through the day. This shift in attitude transforms the experience from one of tedious maintenance to one of mindful self care. The condition itself often feels different at night. Freed from the distractions of the day, the itch can seem more pronounced, more demanding of attention. This presents both a challenge and an opportunity, a chance to practice observing sensation without immediately reacting to it, to sit with discomfort without being ruled by it. The ultimate goal of these nighttime practices is not just physical comfort, but mental peace, the ability to set aside the day's concerns and the body's minor irritations and surrender to rest. The condition becomes not an obstacle to sleep, but a teacher of the skills needed to achieve it: acceptance, observation, and the gentle setting aside of things that cannot be immediately resolved. In this way, the management of the condition becomes integrated into the larger rhythm of day and night, activity and rest, doing and being. It finds its proper place as one small part of the complex tapestry of human existence, neither insignificant nor all important, but simply one thread among many in the rich fabric of a life. In the quiet heart of the night, when all other sounds have faded, the body's whispers become most audible. The rhythm of the breath, the beat of the heart, the faint symphony of digestion, these form the background music of existence. And sometimes, among these sounds, comes the familiar whisper of an itch, a signal from the frontiers of the self. This whisper speaks of boundaries, of the permeable membrane where self meets world, where our bodies interact with their environments. It tells of ecosystems and equilibriums, of the constant negotiation between human cells and microbial life. It is a message from the edge, a report on the state of the borderlands. Learning to listen to this whisper without panic, without immediate reaction, becomes a practice in bodily awareness. The itch becomes not just a problem to be solved, but a signal to be understood. What is it saying about the skin's environment? About recent habits? About levels of stress or fatigue? The whisper contains information if we learn to decode it. This attentive listening transforms the relationship with the body from adversarial to collaborative. The body is not betraying you with its itch, it is communicating with you. The goal becomes not to silence the messenger, but to understand the message and respond appropriately, not with frantic scratching, but with thoughtful care. This practice of listening extends beyond physical sensations to other signals the body sends: tension in muscles, changes in energy, patterns of hunger and thirst. The condition becomes a teacher of bodily literacy, training the ear to hear the body's subtle language. In the deepest silence of the night, when the whisper is heard most clearly, one can sometimes achieve a kind of peace with it, an acceptance that this is part of having a body, part of being a living creature in a world teeming with other life. The whisper becomes not an enemy, but a companion on the journey of embodiment, a quiet reminder of the miracle and complexity of physical existence. The first light of dawn finds the body refreshed, repaired, ready for a new day. The morning rituals commence: the shower, the drying, the choice of socks and shoes. The management of the condition begins again, but with the perspective that comes from rest. What felt like an urgent problem the night before may seem more manageable in the morning light. This daily renewal offers a constant opportunity to begin again, to apply consistently the habits that maintain balance. The condition teaches the value of daily practice, of small actions repeated consistently over time. It is not the dramatic gesture that brings results, but the quiet, repeated application of care. The morning assessment of the feet becomes a kind of a daily check in with the physical self, a moment to notice changes, to assess the state of the skin, to make adjustments to the day's plans if needed. This regular attention fosters a familiarity with one's own body that can be grounding and centering. The choice of footwear for the day becomes a strategic decision, balancing style with practicality, professional requirements with health needs. This daily negotiation between different values and needs becomes a small practice in holistic decision making, in finding the balance between various aspects of life. The condition thus becomes woven into the fabric of daily existence, not as a dominating problem, but as one consideration among many in the complex tapestry of a day. It finds its proper proportion, neither ignored nor given excessive importance, but integrated into the overall practice of self care. Each morning offers a new beginning, a fresh opportunity to maintain the balance, to practice the habits, to continue the quiet, consistent work of management. The condition becomes not a burden, but a practice, a daily exercise in attention, care, and balance that ultimately contributes to overall well being. The changing light of afternoon finds the body in full engagement with the world, working, moving, interacting. The condition, if well managed, recedes into the background, becoming a minor consideration rather than a central focus. This is the goal of effective management, not the total elimination of the condition, but its successful integration into an active, engaged life. The awareness of the condition may surface at moments when feet feel warm or damp, when shoes are removed at the gym, when sitting down after a long walk, but these moments become cues for minor adjustments rather than sources of anxiety. A quick visit to the restroom to dry the feet, a change into fresh socks, the application of a little powder. This integrated awareness represents a mature relationship with the condition, one based on knowledge and capability rather than fear or frustration. The condition becomes something you manage rather than something that manages you. The sense of agency restored makes all the difference in quality of life. The afternoon often brings opportunities for prevention, the chance to air out feet during a break, to change socks after exercise, to choose open footwear when possible. These small acts of prevention become automatic, requiring little conscious thought. They represent the incorporation of management into the natural flow of the day. This integration allows attention to focus on more meaningful aspects of life: work, relationships, creativity, enjoyment. The condition takes up less mental space, freeing cognitive resources for more important matters. This is the ultimate victory, not the absence of the condition, but the ability to live fully despite its presence. The afternoon thus becomes a testament to successful adaptation, to the human capacity to incorporate challenges into the flow of life without being defined by them. The condition becomes a minor thread in the rich tapestry of daily experience, noticeable but not dominant, managed but not controlling. As evening descends and the pace of the day slows, the relationship with the condition undergoes another subtle shift. The time for prevention gives way to the time for restoration, for addressing any discomfort that has emerged during the day, for repairing any damage, for preparing the feet for the night's renewal. The evening bath or shower becomes a ritual of cleansing and assessment, The thorough drying afterward becomes an act of care. The application of treatments, if needed, becomes an investment in tomorrow's comfort. These evening rituals mark the transition from the public world to the private self, from doing to being. This transition time offers an opportunity to reflect on the day's management. What worked, what didn't, what might be done differently tomorrow. This brief reflection turns daily experience into learning, gradually building a deep personal knowledge of what the body needs and how it responds. The evening management also represents a setting aside of the day's concerns, a turning inward toward rest and renewal. The attention to the body becomes a way of releasing the tensions of the day, of transitioning from activity to rest, from engagement to stillness. The quality of this evening attention matters greatly. When performed with hurry or resentment, it feels like one more chore at the end of a long day. When approached with care and presence, it becomes a soothing ritual, a way of honoring the body that has served throughout the day. The condition thus becomes integrated into the natural rhythm of the day, managed in the morning, monitored in the afternoon, addressed in the evening. This rhythmic approach makes management feel less like a burden and more like part of the natural flow of life. Another aspect of the daily dance between activity and rest, doing and being, in the deepest hours of the night, when consciousness has retreated and the body undertakes its silent work of repair. The condition continues its own quiet existence. The fungal cells, if present, continue their slow metabolism. The human skin cells continue their process of renewal. The immune system maintains its watch. This nighttime activity continues regardless of our awareness, a reminder that our bodies are never truly at rest, but always engaged in the complex processes of maintenance and balance. The condition is part of this nighttime world, subject to its rhythms and processes. The success of any management strategy ultimately depends on aligning with these natural rhythms, supporting the body's innate healing capacities rather than working against them. The night's rest is perhaps the most powerful ally in this process, allowing the body to direct energy toward repair and rebalancing. The condition thus teaches respect for the body's own wisdom and timing. Some things cannot be rushed, but must unfold according to their own rhythm. The gradual improvement that comes with consistent care reflects this natural pace. The slow rebalancing of an ecosystem, not the quick fix of a machine. This perspective encourages patience, the understanding that management is a process rather than an event, a journey rather than a destination. The nightly retreat into unconsciousness becomes an act of faith in the body's capacity to heal and maintain balance given the right conditions and support. The night thus becomes not just a time of rest, but a partner in management, a daily period when the body can work unimpeded by the stresses and activities of waking life. The condition finds its proper place in this cycle, neither feared nor ignored, but understood as part of the complex, ongoing conversation between the body and its environment. With the coming of dawn, the cycle begins anew. The assessment, the prevention, the management. But over time, with consistent care, something shifts. The rituals remain, but their urgency diminishes. The awareness persists, but its emotional charge lessens. The condition gradually recedes from a central concern to a minor consideration. This shift happens so gradually, it often goes unnoticed until one day the realization arrives. The whisper has grown quiet. The itch rarely surfaces. The management rituals have become simple habits, performed with minimal thought or effort. The condition has been not conquered, but accommodated, brought into a sustainable balance. This balance represents a hard-won peace, achieved not through dramatic victory, but through consistent, patient attention. It is the peace that comes from understanding rather than fear, from capability rather than helplessness. It is a practical peace based on knowledge and effective action. This peace brings a quiet confidence, the assurance that should the whisper return, you have the knowledge and tools to address it. This confidence eliminates the anxiety that often accompanied the condition, the fear of recurrence or embarrassment. The problem becomes manageable and therefore less threatening. This hard-earned balance often extends beyond the condition itself, influencing one's overall approach to health and well-being. The lessons learned. Consistency matters. Prevention is powerful. Small actions accumulate into significant results. Apply to other areas of self-care. The condition thus becomes not a lifelong affliction, but a teacher that eventually works itself out of a job. The lessons remain, but the need for intense management gradually fades. The whisper falls silent, not because the enemy has been destroyed, but because the environment has been changed, the balance restored, the peace achieved. In the end, the story of this condition is not really about fungi or feet or pharmaceuticals. It is a story about attention, about what we choose to notice about our bodies and how we choose to respond. It is about the relationship between discomfort and care, between irritation and response, between the physical self and the conscious mind. This story reveals our incredible capacity for adaptation, for developing strategies and habits that allow us to live comfortably despite minor physical realities. It showcases human ingenuity in creating solutions from the simplest home remedy to the most advanced pharmaceutical formulation. The story also highlights our deep interconnectedness with the microbial world that shares our bodies, with the cultural meanings we attach to physical conditions, with the countless others who share this common experience. The condition becomes a point of connection rather than isolation. Most importantly, this story teaches about balance, about finding the middle ground between ignoring the body's signals and being obsessed by them, between resignation and frantic effort, between acceptance and action. The wisdom lies in knowing when to intervene and when to let be, when to treat and when to simply observe. The quiet management of this condition over time becomes a practice in this balanced attention, a daily exercise in caring for the physical self without being consumed by it, in addressing problems without being defined by them, in living fully despite life's inevitable minor irritations. This balanced approach ultimately brings a quality of peace that transcends the specific condition. It represents a way of being in a body, a way that acknowledges limitations and vulnerabilities while also recognizing capacity and resilience. It is a peace earned through patience, attention, and consistent care. As this extensive exploration draws toward its close, we return to where we began, with the human foot, that faithful servant that carries us through our lives, and the occasional whisper that emerges from its surface. We have traveled through science and psychology, through history and personal experience, through treatment and acceptance. The journey reveals that the most effective approach combines knowledge with practice, understanding the biological reality while implementing the daily habits that maintain balance. It involves treating the body with care while refusing to let minor physical realities dominate emotional life. It means acknowledging the condition without being defined by it. The peace that comes from successful management is not the dramatic peace of a battle won, but the quiet peace of an ecosystem in balance. It is the satisfaction of a problem understood and managed, if not completely eliminated. It is the comfort of knowing that should the whisper return, you possess the knowledge and tools to quiet it again. This hard-won balance allows the feet to return to their proper role as faithful carriers, rarely noticed, but always present. It allows the mind to turn its attention to the wider world, freed from preoccupation with this minor frontier of the self. The whisper falls silent, not because it has been utterly destroyed, but because it has been heard, understood, and answered with consistent, compassionate care. And so we arrive at a place of acceptance and capability. The condition finds its proper proportion in the landscape of a life, neither insignificant nor all important, but simply one aspect of physical being among many. It is managed with consistency, noticed with compassion, and accepted as part of the complex reality of having a body. The moon rises again on a world at rest, on bodies in repair, on the quiet, endless conversation between human cells and microbial life. The story of this condition continues, as it has for millennia. But for now, for this moment, the whisper has grown quiet. The peace that remains is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of capability, the knowledge that whatever comes, you have the resources to meet it. This capability represents the true victory, not over the fungus, but over the frustration, the embarrassment, the disruption. It is a victory of understanding over fear, of consistency over desperation, of balance over conflict. It is a quiet victory, known mainly to yourself, but no less significant for its privacy. This capability extends beyond the specific condition to other challenges life may bring. The lessons learned, patience, persistence, attentive care, serve well in many contexts. The condition becomes not just a problem solved, but a teacher that leaves behind lasting gifts of wisdom and self-knowledge. The night deepens, the world sleeps, and the body continues its silent work of maintenance and balance. The feet, now quiet, rest from their daily labors. The mind, now peaceful, turns toward dreams. The whisper has been answered, not with violence, but with care, not with eradication, but with balance. In this balance lies a profound kind of health, not the abstract ideal of perfect freedom from all discomfort, but the practical, achievable reality of managed well-being. It is a health that makes room for life's imperfections, that accommodates vulnerability while celebrating resilience, that finds peace not in perfection, but in capable response. And so we come to rest, in body and in mind, having given this common condition its due attention, having learned its lessons, having found a way to live in peace with this small aspect of our physical reality. The journey ends where all good journeys end, in homecoming, in understanding, in peace, in the gentle space between sleeping and waking, In the first moments of dawn's light, the body and mind stir toward consciousness. The awareness returns gradually. The feel of the sheets, the sound of birds, the rhythm of breath. And in these first moments, before the day's concerns assemble themselves, there is a simple, profound peace. The feet, those faithful carriers, announce their presence not with a whisper of irritation, but with a quiet sense of readiness. They have been repaired through the night, restored by rest. The management rituals await, but they feel less like burdens and more like natural extensions of care, like brushing teeth or washing face. This integration represents the final stage of the journey, the condition woven so completely into the fabric of self-care that it barely registers as separate. The habits are maintained, but automatically. The attention is given, but without anxiety. The balance is sustained, but without struggle. The new day stretches ahead, full of possibilities. The choice of socks and shoes will be made with practical wisdom, not anxious calculation. The day's activities will be engaged in fully, with minimal thought given to what might be happening on the skin's surface. The condition has found its proper place, acknowledged, managed, but not dominant. This is the gift of consistent care, not just the absence of symptoms, but the presence of freedom, the freedom to focus on what matters, to engage fully with life, to forget about the body's minor vulnerabilities because they have been adequately addressed. The management continues, but it no longer manages you, and so the day begins like any other day. But with this quiet difference, the whisper has been answered, the balance has been found, the peace has been earned. The journey through understanding and management has led to this simple, profound destination. A day lived fully, a body at peace, a mind free to attend to life's wonders rather than its irritations. And so we arrive at the final quiet, the place where the story ends and ordinary life resumes. But ordinary life now informed by hard-won wisdom, by patience earned through practice, by peace achieved through consistent care. The condition that began as a whisper of irritation becomes, in the end, a teacher of subtle lessons about boundaries and balance, about attention and acceptance. The feet that carried us through this long exploration now carry us forward into days less burdened by preoccupation, more open to experience. The mind that wrestled with frustration now possesses practical strategies for comfort. The relationship with one's own body has deepened, becoming more knowledgeable, more compassionate, more capable. The world continues, with all its microbial richness, with all its opportunities for exposure, with all its challenges to our physical comfort. But now we meet this world better equipped, with understanding instead of fear, with effective habits instead of desperate measures, with balanced perspective instead of anxious obsession. The whisper may return from time to time, when circumstances change, when routines are disrupted, when the body's balance is challenged. But now it will be met differently, not as a crisis, but as a reminder, not as an enemy, but as a familiar signal that some attention is needed, not with panic, but with capable response. This is the final lesson, that our bodies are not problems to be solved, but companions to be cared for. That perfect health is not the absence of all challenge, but the capacity to meet challenges effectively. That peace comes not from eliminating all discomfort, but from developing the wisdom and means to address it. And so we close this lengthy contemplation, not with a declaration of victory, but with a quiet acknowledgement of journey completed, understanding gained, balance found. The pages end here, but the practice continues. The gentle, consistent care of this physical being that is our home, our vehicle, our companion, through the brief and precious adventure of a life. The whisper is answered, the peace is real, the day awaits.